Yes, that should be absolutely fine. Yeah, thank you.
Right, I've now clicked start. Streaming.
Yellow, orange, and then
Okay, I've clicked start streaming. It's now. We are now streaming. So don't swear.
They will not be heard over there.
Good. Just to let you know,
This,
I've asked Sharon to send Rosemary Burke to wear a
so it will tell you how many viewers.
Yes.
I apologise. Then people will, if anything's written on here, then you can relay it. If it's just rubbish,
Yeah.
I don't really.
a foot of me.
So at the moment it's saying that stream's helping. Sometimes it does come up with an error message. It says something about changing the bridge. It makes it so, and I've never done it, not when I'm streaming since 2002.
Yeah.
So, now Deputy Mayor's badge. Deputy Mayor's badge.
And then you'll see my baby going, Jackie, what do you need? Not sent it yet. I know she gets
She just found a dog.
My wife spent more than I did.
Okay, yeah.
So do you know which character it
I
is?
got an extra coat. I didn't know his coat was going to
Was that check?
It's dark, it's drinking hot. Nice. I don't do bread. I don't got your I'm working out. It takes quite a lot of February off. What's the recommendation? It's in that budget.
How I've got it organised. And I can
Are you impressed?
do stuff in between. You know, so.
It took me a little while to get
There are a few characters who yeah, I'd like to go to the Azores.
Yeah, what can we do? I'm going to shout some.
Oh yeah.
Jane needs like that as well.
I'll tell you what, the one place I'm going to Madeira, and that's Portuguese. The amount of cruise liners there is unbelievable. Cruise liners.
Oh, yeah.
Size ones. Yeah. Right, we're getting rid of directions.
So, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's coming up to 7 o'clock, and so we will begin shortly with public participation. But before we do, just a few words of housekeeping. There is no fire drill tonight, so if we hear a fire alarm or any alarm going off, it's the real thing. If you do hear the alarm go off, please follow the fire escape signs that are throughout the building, preferably going down the stairs that you came up to get here. Please don't use the lift. If for any reason the stairs are blocked with smoke, there is a separate fire escape that runs down behind this wall here and comes out in the yard by the side of the town hall. The muster points are very obvious when you get outside, and members of the town hall staff will make sure that we're all stood together if the fire engine or emergency services have to come. If you need to go to the loo while you're here, there is a toilet just out the door to the right, and you should see it there. So now, without further ado, we have a number of people who wish to speak for public participation. Please, could you keep your talk to about 3 minutes? We have a cunning 3-minute timer here, so I shall hopefully turn it over when you start to speak, and I'll let you know when your time is run out. So the first person to speak on my list here is Louise Somerville, Glastonbury on foot. Louise.
Hi, thank you. I want to speak up. So I wanted to ask about the neighbourhood plan situation and the survey that happened in relation to housing, which is something that I brought to the town council when we will be doing that soon. But first of all, I'm just going to make a little comment. know, which is that there are no drains where I live. And we've not had massive rain, so I've not seen huge floods. But if you walk from the close car park behind the properties of Archers Way, you'll notice that there is a new road surface there with no drains. There was previously a drain, I think. And then you cross over the close and you continue to walk the rear of the properties of St Edmunds Road, and again, also Archers Way, and there's no drains there, but Claire can point out where I mean. And when you come back to Buckclose Car Park, you are facing the car park and you look down, there are no drains in Buckclose, and then if you walk down to Archers Way, left where there is no entry, the right is the library. The first drain you see is the library. So I just wanted to draw to your attention, if there are any roadworks happening at any point whilst we're drains, you can put it somewhere there, it would be quite useful. Meanwhile, I wanted to know about housing and the neighbourhood plan results. So I looked up the dates and I was trying to find the results, and I'm hoping somebody from the council can tell me where these results are. So there was a neighbourhood plan survey in 2016-17. In 2017, there was the post-it note survey where we all went to the town hall and wrote our information on the post-it notes. This continued into 2018, and here's a quote from the council. Through our roadshows and consultation events in 2016-17, we've listened with interest to over 1,000 responses. We are very aware many of you have not had the opportunity to have your say, have your voice, your views, thoughts and ideas to Glastonbury's neighbourhood plan. That is the purpose of this questionnaire, to seek your opinions and then add them to the responses so far. And I'm aware that another consultation exercise might be being prepared. What I'm curious to know is, where are the results from the questionnaire, the post-it notes, the survey that we did, and is it possible to use any of that feedback towards getting more affordable housing in Glastonbury? Because as those of you that were at the Zoom I spoke know, there is no, it's not even affordable housing, there is no housing in Glastonbury for rent. It does not exist anymore, in the same way as other cities, and what I've discussed with Lindsay and other members is, let's have a plan. I'm really happy to contribute in some way if that helps. I'm extremely concerned that people don't have housing, and I just wanted to just put that back on record and say, hey, maybe there's some evidence in that neighbourhood town plan we did before. Let's look at the results and find out. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We don't normally respond, but what I can tell you is that the neighbourhood plan is still live. It's not finished yet because Mendip took an awful long time to approve their local plan part 2, which has only just happened. It's almost 2 years late, but it's just happened. We wanted to have our neighbourhood plan come into referendum after the local plan part 2, because the neighbourhood plan would be pushing for exactly the sort of thing that you're saying, more affordable housing, social housing, etc., and highlighting the issues of housing in the town. But if we went to referendum before local plan part 2 was approved, then the neighbourhood plan would become defunct as soon as local plan part 2. So whichever is the later approved plan becomes legislation. We want it to be the Glastonbury neighbourhood plan rather than the Mendip local plan, if you see what I mean. So it's still live, and we are going to be, now that the local plan part 2 has been approved at the last full council meeting at Mendip, we are reactivating the neighbourhood plan. And Connor here, who might stand up, is our new member of staff who is going to be supporting us in the neighbourhood plan. So that's exactly why he's here.
And where are the results from 2016 into 2018 survey?
They're all within the plan, but we haven't published it yet. But we will be doing that shortly. Yeah, thank you. So next is Susanna Clements, low traffic Glastonbury.
Oh, hi. I just add to what Rick's saying, it's still mine, and we still contribute to the because I moved back in 2000 to do that. Then my main question is, related, with the park and ride and electric bus, no public town deal, but I read that how to talk about that being public to use, council. So I want to know how people contribute to consultation, when the consultation is going to be on that, because a lot of people are sort of saying they've got ideas for the electric bus and so forth. So that's my main question. Because that was very quick, I also just want to draw to your attention, quite a few people are thinking about walking, that's quite a few people have told me that it's difficult to walk up my house road because of the overgrown hedges, as well as bins and so forth and pavements. So I was wondering if there's anything the town council could do to sort out the problem of overgrown hedges, but people are not able to manage their own hedges. So just those two questions.
Thank you very much. We will note those, and we will be promoting consultation as and when it is about to happen. Next I have Claire Rosalie Burke, Travellers' Rights.
If you can closer.
She's not.
She's not here. Next I have Emma King, supporting high street businesses. Emma.
Yeah, hello everybody. Well, basically, as I'm sure most of you know, I've got a business right at the top near the high street. And obviously, the town has always taken an ability during the pandemic and since the pandemic, although obviously things are happening, you know what I mean. So, but the problem is that, I mean, the top end of the town, we've already had reduced footfall anyway. So, I mean, January is obviously difficult for everybody, but the problem is, of course, that normally January comes off if you have made money during the summer and over Christmas, and we really haven't been doing that. So, so there's a few things really that I just want to sort of draw to your attention and suggestions that I've got as to ways that we can perhaps move forward to try and make the top end of town more viable, because at the moment it really isn't viable at all. And some of the issues obviously that we have is, for example, I mean, the traffic at the top there speeds very, very fast. We've got very narrow pavements, we haven't got any toilets, and I think all of those things make it difficult for people to access it, and maybe they just think it's not worth coming up there. Additionally, of course, we had the zombie walk for the second time in a row decided to cut off their walk at the zebra crossing, even though they had the entire street. Well, so basically, as somebody said, it was dead at the top and undead at the bottom. So I think I made less than £20 that day. So that was really appalling from my perspective. And also, of course, the Christmas trees, many of us didn't get off the opportunity to have them. So the Christmas trees stopped, and it looked a bit again like nobody was bothered about at all. Also, of course, I know that this was a last-minute thing, but the frost fell just another thing. I know that was a last-minute arrangement, but really, genuinely feels, and I'm not the only business owner in the centre town who feels this, that we're just being ignored and sidelined, and in a way, it almost feels like we're being penalised. So what I would suggest is that I think the top end of the high street needs some sort of rebranding. Someone in Luton TV Works there suggested that we could actually rename the top end of the high street, give it a new name. Some of the simple things that could be done, and this has been asked, been suggested many times by people up there, that we could at least have a sign somewhere further down the high street, maybe near the church or near the post office, to point people upwards and say, you know, there's more business stuff here, like Northland Street, for example, or something even simpler. So there was like things like putting benches up there would be really helpful, so people could come and sit down, and we could have maybe something like an artwork or a sculpture or an empty thing at the top, so people could come up, have a look and see what's there. That would encourage people to come up to the top end. We could have maybe some archways, so make it into a separate area. And ideally, and I know I'm not the only person at the top end of town who thinks this, I think that a lot of them actually like that particular part of the policy to be pedestrianised. Most of the people who don't want the pedestrianisation in the bottom end of town. The people at the top end, the only person who I really know doesn't want it is Tor and pet supplies. But they're actually quite near to the rest of the high street, so presumably they could have a bay perhaps, and then that would be not really enough. But the point is, if we had pedestrianisation similar to what we've got on North Main Street, traffic can still get through in the case of an emergency, and at the top end where the laundrette is, could become a bus turning area, because there's massive curbs that can be cut back,
The bus stops can stay where they are, buses don't have to go down Lambert Street. And if we had that area there, we could make that something really nice. And people could park, people could sit down, it could be a really nice area for people. So I'm just really putting out there that we really need to think, when there's an event happening in town, don't disclude that part of High Street, because there's a lot of business up there, and we're all really struggling, really severely at the moment. I mean, even the market takes business away from us. I mean, most of us don't bother open on a Tuesday a lot of the time, because nobody comes up, particularly when the day hours are short. So, basically, it's just a bit of a plea, really, not just for me to have people up there to say, just remember that we're there and we really need help. And I really do genuinely think that a lot of us are going to struggle to survive over the next couple of years if something isn't done to sort of just really encourage people to explore the entire length of the High Street and not just turn back when they get to the level crossing. So I think that's pretty much everything. So, thank you, listen, but please just put this on the agenda. Even small things would be a help. And it at least makes us feel like we were being listened to and we're being considered. Thank you.
Thank you, Emma. And we will certainly try to find out why Christmas trees weren't offered to you. That certainly wasn't our intention. And thank you for your other excellent suggestions around what could be done. We'll follow that up, I'm sure. So finally, I have Chris Davis on Tour Leisure.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. This is by way of response to Steve Henderson's report on the November council meeting. Unfortunately, I was unable to get here for the December one due to planning development. Very interesting presentation, Steve, but unfortunately, it left a lot more questions unanswered than were answered. I won't go into them in detail because I'm sure everyone else knows them, but the interesting thing is that in the project for the current plan for the Tour Leisure area, it says lead organisation, consortium between Fusion Lifestyle Limited, Glastonbury Football Club, Woodland Park Bowls Club, and other Glastonbury sports clubs. No mention of the cricket club. The interesting thing is the cricket club's been there for a long, long time, but there's no mention of that there. But all of a sudden, the cricket club are there. Why? Because they've suddenly been able to fund a new sports pavilion. Because the ECB are prepared to put money in. Interesting, isn't it? Am I being cynical? I am. Now then, Glastonbury Football Club. Interesting. Are they going to put anything into the pot on that? I don't know. The interesting thing is that area of the Tour Leisure Bill, there was a petition to have that made village green status some while back. But the people that were trying to get village green status were persuaded to go with Fields in Trust. Now, the reason why they wanted village green status was to stop any building. Mendip District Council had all sorts of plans, maybe to put a hotel there, build houses. But nothing came of that. So now, under the proposal for leisure, there is the possibility of an arena, of stadium being built there. Now that will take up a fair amount of space. So, in my looking at park, which is what they were looking at, village green centre, I would imagine that they were thinking of a lovely footpath all the way around, so that people could walk with pushchairs, disabled access and everything else. But if you put an arena there, you will not be able to have that, because that will block it. And I'm sorry to say, this is not the first time football club have come running wanting to be let out. Because that happened when they left the Abbey Park. They were looking there. Somebody made them a leasing of the area where they are now. That was very nice. But I just thought I'd bear that in mind. And As far as who is going to manage it, it is down to Fusion Lifestyle. I'm sorry to say, I don't have any confidence. Anytime you ask any question about what their responsibilities are, you're told, sorry, we can't tell you anything because of commercial confidentiality. Now, if there's going to be anything there, I'm sorry to say, we must have complete
Transparency.
transparency of what is supposed to be going on. And so we know who is responsible for what and what they're supposed to do. Because I'm sorry, the maintenance I'm doing at the moment, the Fusion, I've been all Saturday night. I won't go into any more and take up your time because I've said enough.
Well, thank you, Chris. I know that Councillor Henderson would like to reply.
Thank you, Chris. Mary, cynicism. I don't know where to begin with the list of misinformation that you've just expounded at Town Council. Almost every fact you came out with was wrong. So I think you and I need to get together. You list your questions of what you think is going on over there, and I'll have an answer for pretty much all of them, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, sure.
I must add that this is the way that bad rumours start spreading in the town, because coming to a public forum like this and speaking as if you know what you're talking about is how rumours spread around the town. And before you know it, it's a bad news story. This is nothing but a good news story.
Well, I'm sorry to say, Steve, that is the way it is around the town. That is the way it is around the town.
What? That is the way that what is?
You know, what I say, what people are saying.
Well, not to me. Come and ask and find out the facts before you stand.
So, gentlemen, perhaps we would encourage you to continue the debate at another time, as we do have some more business to attend to this evening. We haven't even started the meeting yet, but I hope that Councillor Henderson will be able to meet with you, Chris, and be able to have that chat, and that you will come to some understanding. So the time is now 20 minutes past 7. So I would now formally like to open the business of the meeting. Are we online?
Your Mayor, may I just check the microphones, because I'm not convinced all of them are switched on. Would you mind if I just ask the councillors just to make sure?
Councillors, if you, rather than pressing a button and making it go red, it might be worth just speaking into the microphone. It should light up green when you say something important.
Hello.
I thought you had.
Good evening, everyone.
All right, that's okay.
There we are. So it's nice to see so many green lights in the room
It's not picking up, Steve.
whilst we speak.
Hello.
Thank you.
So the microphones appear to be working.
That's okay. It was just not picking up Councillor Henderson. I'm very sorry.
Oh no!
Yes, considering the word I heard Councillor Henderson mutter, it's probably just as well. So, ladies and gentlemen, we will now open the formal business. Sorry. Of the meeting, the appliance of silence, of course. The meeting is now being streamed for people who unfortunately can't make it here tonight. So first item on the agenda is to receive a presentation from Jane Copestake from the YMCA. Jane, are you here?
Your Worship, Jane sent me an email this morning to say she's unable to make this evening's meeting, and she's asked if I could reprogram it. I've made a suggestion that perhaps she ought to present to the Youth Committee on the 25th of January, but I haven't heard back from her yet.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jared. So we now move to item 2. Before we move any further, with all the excitement that we've just had with electronics and heated debate, I've forgotten to light the Glastonbury candle. So may I ask, Maggie, would you be happy to light the Glastonbury candle for us? Thank you so much then. So I'd like to ask you to join me in observing a silent minute where we can attune ourselves ready for tonight's meeting. Thank you. Thank you very much, everyone. So, councillors, we now move on. We have a casual vacancy that was going to be filled by co-option for this council, and we have a number of candidates who would like to be considered, and we've asked them to come to give us a presentation, basically, giving us a little bit of information about who they are and helping us to make a decision later in the meeting. So this is for St Mary's Ward, and the first prospective councillor for co-option is Maggie Dear. Maggie, would you like to come to the end of the table, and if we can provide you with a microphone, one of the councillors nearby, thank you.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Right, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you all this evening. And I also appreciate you wouldn't invite someone to join you unless you were happy that they brought the right mix of skills, experience, values and vision to our diverse, hard-working and focused council. So a bit more about me. I joined Avon and Somerset Police when I left school, working in Frome, Wells and Glastonbury before moving on to Yeovil. This was in the late 70s when we had a busy police station locally, including their own cells, and a notoriously overzealous traffic warden. Some of us who date back to the late 70s will remember the traffic warden well. I went on to attend Bristol University to qualify as a child protection social worker, working in the field of child protection, which includes child poverty, deprivation, domestic violence and abuse, and of course all forms of child abuse. And again, I worked in Yeovil, Frome and Glastonbury, spending several years working in Glastonbury as a social worker. An experience that gave me first-hand opportunities to actually see some of the social issues and deprivations affecting children and their families in this area. Since I moved here, this community has faced many challenges. I remember the consultation on pedestrianising Northload Street, the marketplace and the absolutely now essential bypass, all of which at the time received very strong opposition as well as being strongly supported. That council took brave decisions and the town continues to benefit from their commitment to making Glastonbury thrive. You as the council have also faced some massive challenges, including the public's issues with the travelling community and street dwellers, the impact of COVID, exciting ventures such as the town deal and the neighbourhood plan. These are issues I'm pleased to see haven't been shied away from. I too would not shy away from these difficult or challenging decisions or the hard work required to see them through. I've used my skills and experience to enable me to support others outside of my work, paying back to my community that which was given to me when I was in need. When I was supported in the care of my terminally ill child, I felt it vital that I could pass on that support to others facing similar issues. Consequently, I set up a charity, Martha Care. Out of that, I engaged with the local community and the council at the time to raise funds and brought innovative events such as Glastonbury Vote Yellow Day and the Glastonbury Zombie Walk to the town. And these events, despite some of the issues that they've brought, have also helped to raise awareness and funds and have brought another unique feature to our town's identity, bringing curious tourists and their business to help us prosper. It wasn't just in Martha-Cow that I was able to demonstrate my worth. I have over 40 years of children's safeguarding experience I now bring to the local charity Children's World, where I am the trustee responsible for children's safeguarding. The charity could not fulfil its obligation without the skills that I bring to it there. I also volunteer for the community fridge. I'm keen to see that find ways to expand this incredibly valuable resource to benefit more local people. I'm particularly interested in things like deprivation and housing, and want to work more strongly to promote both, and especially in the field of, or in the area of improving the housing stock within Glastonbury. I spent years working collaboratively with other agencies, such as the police, councils, health and education. I know the importance of teamwork in ensuring the job gets done. To achieve this, I needed an array of skills I believe you will find invaluable in tying up the last 5 months of this council's business. I showed leadership, innovation, teamwork, collaboration, financial management, flexibility and problem solving. I was able to focus on the deliverables on the outcome. I was evidence-based and made sound arguments. I am now an independent councillor. I previously stood as a Lib Dem, but I've now resigned from the Liberal Democrats. This is because I hold the strong belief that my community's best interest is of paramount importance, and I want to serve unfettered by national policies. Being independent means I can work across councils, irrespective of party affiliations, ensuring I put my effort behind the best policy, not the best party. I hope you'll support me in joining the council today and will welcome my help with the demanding tasks already in hand. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank you for being brave enough to go first as well. I know I called you up. Maggie, that was fantastic. And now we have Bruce Denny, is it? Yes, Bruce Denny. So please do come and address the council at the end of the...
Not any less terrifying to go second. Good evening, my name is Bruce Denny. I run a small IT business in the town. I am a business consultant, come financial consultant. I think there's something wrong with politics. I think I've spent my entire life fighting against things, and it's wonderful to be in Glastonbury with a council who I don't fight against. I actually think that what this council does is really good, and it's inspired me to want to get involved in politics. I don't think I can really say a lot more than that. If people got questions, I'm quite happy to answer them, but I'm here to try and help you guys if you want me.
Thank you. I didn't give Maggie the opportunity to be asked questions. Councillors, would you prefer to be asked questions of the candidates as they stand? Or?
I would like to ask Maggie a quick question, if I may.
Okay, so perhaps, if you don't mind, Bruce, if you could just come back and we'll ask you a question. I do apologise. I'm afraid I'm not firing on all cylinders, as I hurt my back rather badly and I'm on quite strong painkillers. So if I'm making a few mistakes tonight, do forgive me. Maggie, question from Councillor Coles.
Hello, Maggie.
Hello.
You had a very excited career. All I wanted to ask you is, why did you decide to leave the police service after all those years?
You know what, it was based on an incident, and you know when I said about my child protection and domestic violence, as a young police officer I attended a domestic violence incident in Yeovil where myself and a colleague entered a house late at night. There'd been a major assault and I found the child underneath the stairs hiding. The child had actually called the police, and I could see the social issues. I mean, I was 19 myself at the time. I could see the social issues that were there. And I wanted to get more involved. And I couldn't. As a police officer, you deal with the job and you move on, and that's your job. And I dealt with many, it was that one that stuck in my mind, but I dealt with many domestic violence incidents and dealt with lots of children. I mean, back in the late 70s, women police officers dealt just with domestics, women and children. That was what we did. So it was that, and then it was as you know, feeling that frustration, I thought I need to do something where I can get more involved, and that's when I decided I was going to retrain as a social worker.
Very fine answer.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for Maggie? Bruce, would you mind coming back to? It's a little bit like mastermind calling you back, but I don't know whether any councillors have any questions for Bruce. Yes, Councillor McDougall.
I'd like to know how long you've lived and candidates have lived in town.
I have lived here 6 years. I moved here just before the Brexit vote, and I couldn't vote in it, unfortunately. That's nice.
Thank you. Any other? Oh, Councillor Smythe.
Before?
Yeah.
What's Glastonbury?
I lived in Binfield, which is a little village outside of Bracknell near Windsor and Wokingham. My kids had grown up and they were left home. Got a big house, so I needed to sell it. And they were building. They built 15,000 houses in the fields around my house, and it was horrendous. They knocked down the town centre, they completely rebuilt it as some sort of modern hellhole, same as every other high street town centre. And I wanted to go somewhere where they wouldn't do that. And we're surrounded by the levels here, and there is no way they can build like that around here. So yeah, that's why I moved here, to get away from development.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Bruce. So next we have Sue Thurgood. Sue.
I know some of you know me already. I hope that you've had the resume in front of you. Have you had? Yes. So I won't go into all of that. I just want to make a couple of salient points, which I think about my standing for this councillor. There's going to be a lot of change ahead. We've got the unitary authority coming along, the town deal, which will affect us, no doubt, even though perhaps the council doesn't control it. There may be constituency boundary changes, which will mean we shall be belonging to another constituency. And I just feel that Glastonbury shouldn't miss out on all of this. It would be easy for Glastonbury to fall off a cliff. The things I would make, the points I would make, just two of them. I have already got experience, 8 years of experience on the town council. Not that I think I know it all, far from it, but I have the experience to know who to go to, who to ask, how to go about things, which only comes after you've sat here for a few years. You'd be surprised how much you have to learn. The other thing, and lastly, I would say that I'm standing as an independent. I do not believe anymore in political labels. So therefore, I'm passionate about serving the people of Glastonbury. I don't have to follow the Liberals, the Conservatives, the Greens. I feel a bit like this is The Apprentice, but John doesn't look like Alan Sugar, so...
I tried my hardest.
But yes, so I realised that Glastonbury is a diverse place, but I love it. I've lived here for 50 odd years. I'm retired, I'm in good health, I'm passionate, especially for the youth and for tour leisure. And there you are. I just stand here and say I'm willing, I'm able. Yes. So thank you.
Thank you,
Any
Sue.
questions?
Yes, any questions for
Questions?
Sue?
Yeah.
Councillor Cottle.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, I have one question for you, Sue.
Right.
You said you've given up on party politics.
Yes.
I'm not going to say that's a bad thing. I did read in your resume that it was because of Boris Johnson.
I didn't vote for Boris.
No, I can see a positive there. I thought I'd let you know that. Okay?
Thank you. Thank you, Nick.
Thank you. Any other questions for Sue? Oh, well, thank you, Sue. And finally, we have Andrew White. Andrew.
Good evening, Your Worship, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for your time for listening to my application. You should have all seen my CV. If you haven't, it's a boring document. But I've got spare copies here just in case you haven't. And first of all, I'm the Green Party. I'm a representative of the Green Party, an enthusiastic representative. Because when I came back to this country, back 6 years ago, I found the political West was available, quite disheartening. And the Green Party was like a shining light, which said, as far as we're concerned, we heard like a boring crowd. That's what we put first, second, third, and we'll do something else as well. But the earth is important. And I really believe that. And it's becoming more and more important. So the Green Party I am strongly promoting, I feel very strongly about it. With government activity, if you look at my resume, it stops in 2012, like a forward cliff. And that was when I stopped working. I should retire. I was in New England at the time, and I was looking for a fourth winter in New England. Never knew to go about New England. You don't look at the fourth winter in New England at the time, because you live in England. And I said, okay, that's it, I'm out of it. And I retired down to Panama. I spent 3 years down in Panama, 11. I came back in 2015 to the UK. I looked around, looked to Cornwall places, and the guy I was staying with said, oh, you're going to Cornwall. We're too far away. I said, you know, you can live here and watch this, it's just a kid you put in Cornwall. And so I said, okay, well, I'll live somewhere. I can't live with my sister. But it's always my mind. I looked around and I couldn't go east, couldn't go north, and to the south. Couldn't go west, very far. Glastonbury. My experience has been my parents lived in Stamford up in North 38 years ago. So I've been here in the 70s, been here in the 80s. And despite that, I still like Glastonbury. So I came in 2015, I loved it immediately, and I liked everywhere I lived, but I loved Glastonbury. I have no idea why, but I do. I got a job in the op shop working with Sarah Clay, worked there for 2 days a week, in the opportunity shop there, and then went to the break union, where I volunteered with the break union, enjoyed that for a couple of years. I also actually started the Talking Cafe up in the church. Very, very interesting idea, and very enjoyable, to be honest, it really is. So I'm looking for my next role to support and to service the community. And here I am, like a reason to join the town council and promote more the Glastonbury. So in the future, what would I do in the future? What would I, if I was appointed the councillor? I would listen and learn. That's the first thing I'm going to do, listen and learn. I represent the citizens of the St Mary's Board. I'd also look at promote the agenda that we have as a council. I also like to be seen to be doing. I know some of you councillors are out there doing things as well as I think they've done right now. But to be seen to be doing is very important for the young people to see the town council not just sitting and debating, but doing stuff. I'm a very hands-on kind of person. Doing something you do. So, that's really the summary of the last 3 or 4 years. Any questions? I think you guys have a question.
Thank you. So I see Councillor Cottle and then Councillor Much.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, very interesting. I've read your resume. I have a question on something you've just said. that I find a little bit, I need clarification. You said you're a hands-on person, but you're not really a sitter and a doer and a debater. Well, most council work is done behind the scenes, I'm afraid to tell you, where you sit down and you have meetings like this, and some of them are exceedingly boring if you're not into it. And I think that's something you would, if you were elected this time or next time, that you would have to think about.
As you can see in my resume, very early on, I spent the first 10 years working for IBM. And then I worked for IBM's competitor. I am very familiar with the behind-the-scenes process. I am very familiar with the work that's going to be done to keep this is. It has to be done, has to be gone through, committees have to be formed and run. I'm very familiar, but at the end of the day, I still am a hands-on person. I always have been a hands-on person, which means if I can get something done, then I'll do it.
Thank you very much. Councillor Much.
Andrew, we're on the same page as far as identifying what we think is the number one issue for anybody in the world, the environment, sports, is there a particular angle on environmental activity that you specifically want to pursue within that?
To my mind, the one thing that I would support your activity in planting trees. It sounds so facile, but it is so crucial to the wellness of the world to plant trees. And we haven't done anywhere near it. You have actually been gone out of your way and seem to be doing things, but we need a lot more trees planted. And I think that's part of it. The other thing I'd like to do is clean up Glastonbury. And it would be nice if we had a clean place to come home to. We can look around and feel proud of wherever we live. And that's about my first support. That's probably two in my first support.
Thank you. I'm going to allow one more question because I see Councillor McDougall wanted to. Yes, well, I think one more because otherwise it's.
I just wanted to clarify your role with the op shop. I believe you're on the board of the op shop. So.
I was on the board, and Richard succeeded Sarah Clare as the chairperson of the op shop, and did that for a year or so. And until last year, when I felt that the op shop had probably run its course and had come to a natural conclusion to recently, the very few clients weren't obvious, they weren't knocking the door down. And we had effectively solved all the problems we originally started the op shop for back in 2003, 2004. And people had mobile phones, they had their tablets, they had all the websites that were available. And I think we had done our job.
Thank you very much. Well, thank you very much for coming and giving your presentation to us. So, candidates, we will be making a decision around the co-option at the end of tonight's meeting. It's going to be in closed session and it will be a secret ballot. And of course, there are 4 very strong candidates and 1 seat, unfortunately. But what I would say to you all is please, there's an election happening in May, as I'm sure you know. So please do stand for election in May, regardless of the outcome of today's decision. Because I think that you're, and it's sad for us, you're all extremely worthy candidates. So thank you very much for coming this evening and giving a presentation to us. Do stay as long as you wish to observe, as Councillor Cotterill put it, the boring process that we may go through tonight. I hope it won't be too tedious, but we will move on. But thank you very much for coming and giving your presentations. So, councillors, we're now moved to item 3, receive apologies. Gerard.
We have apologies from Councillor Christine Pryor and County Councillor Terry Napper. County Councillor Liz Lation is attending another meeting. Will be at this one as soon as she's able.
Thank you. Councillor Cotterill.
Yeah, I'd like to apologise on Councillor Lunn's behalf because he has been very seriously unwell, and I'm hoping that he's a little bit better now. He's been in hospital for a few days recently, and he came out, and I've got to be honest, I haven't spoken to him within a couple of days, so I'm surprised he hasn't given his apologies personally, but I know the reason why he's not here.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Councillor Cottle. I'm sure we'll make a note of that. Okay, so we move on now to declarations of interest. Councillors, this is particularly pertinent to any item on the agenda tonight. Well, I see that we will be talking about the town's fund, and I need to declare that I'm on the board of the Town Deal Fund, and so is Councillor Tucker. Any others, Councillor
And
Tucker?
we're also we're going to discuss the precept of budget, and we probably need to declare our interest on GIC.
Yes, thank you very much. So as far as the precept is concerned, board members of the Glastonbury Information Trust, make yourself known. So that's Councillor Keary, Councillor Tucker, myself. Any other declarations of interest? Thank you. If you realise that you have an interest as we move forward through the agenda, please let me or the clerk know. So our next item of business is to approve and sign as a correct record of the minutes of the meeting on Tuesday the 14th of December. Councillors, you have them in your paper. I draw your attention to page 35. Page 36. Page 37.
Worship, if I may.
Yes.
Can I ask the town clerk to seek quotes for the replacement of gates on land off the Thornden estate? Have you got a quote, Gerald, and when do we expect those new gates to be replaced?
What number is it?
B, bullet 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Item B.
Oh, thank you.
In response, sorry, in response,
So it will be reviewed on the agenda, Councillor, if that's all right. Just to remind councillors to stand when they're speaking. Councillors, page 38. Page 39. Councillor Ouch.
May I speak in relation to motion 142?
Yes.
A. In relation to the fact that I wasn't here last month, I'd like some clarification, if I may. Thank you. Right. Essentially, on the 14th of December, the motion I had been informed was going to be postponed due to the fact that I had a conversation with Gerard Tucker on a evening just before the meeting because my car broke down. Now, this information was relayed to Councillor Pryor, who was going to second the motion. Obviously, I wasn't going to be able to propose it. And she agreed not to attend because the motion had been postponed. Now, essentially, before the council meeting, I received an email from yourself, Your Worship, about asking me to not proceed with the motion on the grounds that under section 45E of the Public Health Act may not include provision requiring a person to undergo medical treatment. Now, that may well be a statement there, but the motion states that the Glastonbury Town Council wished to write to Nadine Zahawi, the Secretary of State for Health, to oppose the introduction of mandatory vaccinations for all NHS staff from the 1st of April. So, as far as I understand, the legislation is still going ahead, and so it still needed to be opposed, and it still needs to be opposed. Nevertheless, now the motion has been put forward in my absence, without my knowledge or consent, it's been defeated. Now, as the key information would have been accompanied, and it wasn't presented before the debate, the motion cannot be proposed again for another 6 months. So it's going to be too late. Obviously, we're going into July then. Now, I had prepared a whole lot of information for that meeting. In my absence, I heard that the motion had been put forward without a proposer and a seconder, and that Your Worship had used Standing Order 27A, that a motion can be put forward by any other member, understandable, stating the ruling of the Mayor on a point of order shall not be discussed. Now, I have no idea what that means. I do not understand. I don't see how that could be used in this instance. It seems blatantly obvious that a motion so important would warrant a proposer and a seconder to deliver it. Now, if you were going in front of a judge, you would not expect the judge to make a conviction or whatever based upon having no evidence. And that is, to me, so blindingly obvious. Anyway, so I believe it's underhand. It was an underhand action that this motion had been voted on in my absence without me being informed first and without supporting evidence. Now, I've got so much information here, and I would have made it very succinct and clear. Even the nursing Times and the organisation responsible for nurses and the Royal College of General Practitioners opposed this mandate. Now, I think we should really look into this.
Your Worship, the decision has been made, it's minuted. I don't believe that at this time we should be going back over this particular issue, and it should stand.
I haven't finished yet. I haven't finished yet. I haven't finished, Your Worship. I have not finished.
So,
we'll wrap up.
So a point of order has been made. I'm quite happy to allow Councillor Houghton to say what he feels he needs to say to the council. Carry on, please, Councillor.
Okay. Now, I believe that this is not how a democracy should be run, and should this be investigated by the local authority ombudsman? And that's a question I'll put to you, because I was given the assurance that this would be postponed until this meeting, and it wasn't. Whatever your position is regarding vaccination, this is neither here nor there. This is about a critical ethical issue with all manner of potential damaging impacts on society into the future. When at least 10% of NHS staff are at real risk of losing their jobs, with many vaccinated staff opposing this mandate and the detrimental effect it will have on their colleagues' livelihoods, this flies in the face of all the praise we lavished on the NHS in March and April 2020 with rainbows and clapping, when the NHS staff sacrifice has been unparalleled. This is how the government intends to repay them. Lives have been turned upside down. It's our duty to support them, and the motion made that possible. This is a duty to those key workers that we've now missed this opportunity, and we can't get that back. So it's pertinent now to inform you that Mandy and I have moved out of Glastonbury. I'm hereby resigning from the council forthwith. I've left the Green Party as well. I don't align with their thinking anymore. And due to the lack of support I've received on the issue of housing and homelessness, particularly since May 2021, when I lost the vote of chairship for the Housing and Homelessness Advisory Committee, since that time, not one meeting has been called on this vitally important committee in the time, at this time of crisis for housing and homelessness. So I want to just wrap up. I won't be long, but I think this needs to be said. When I campaigned to stand for council, I made dealing with homelessness my main pledge. I deeply believe that affordable eco-housing was the way forward to build these simple buildings. So when I put forward, after many hours of painstaking work, to submit the bid for the Town Deal Fund for 9 million, 8.9, to provide homes for over 250 people, I was told that housing was not a priority for the Town Deal Fund. I find that appalling. I've worked tirelessly trying to alleviate the terrible lack of provision for travellers and van dwellers in this town. And despite the promises from Mendip, nothing has been forthcoming. And we have had the opportunity to make a provision for van dwellers with the promise of temporary or long-term sites, and that's not materialised. So neither most of the Green Party councillors or other councillors have supported me, apart from Councillor Pryor and Roni Dougal, okay? I have learned a great deal from being on this council, and I know there's so much more to be done. And I wish whoever is the new councillor and everyone else here will carry on with your great work, and I know that you're all able to make great things happen, and I hope these visions materialise. So I believe that my replacement can be found in the same co-option method process that's been going on this evening. And I just want to say, I hope one day that I can return to continue the work this Mason Town deserves sometime in the distant future. And I bid you all a good night and success in whatever you're doing.
So, Councillor Atkin, I don't know if you wish to wait to hear your fellow councillors here.
Yes, I think
Councillor McDougall and Councillor Barnett.
Is it okay to take this off so people can hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, so, yeah, excuse me, I'm losing my voice a little bit. I understand your frustration, Brian. I think we're all extremely frustrated on the housing issue. We are at Mendip, massively frustrated, across all parties. You know, it's not just you. Now, I'm on the planning board. I'm not sure that you even know that I'm on the planning board at Mendip. It's a shame you have apparently not read any of the articles that I've sent you and have not dialogued with me.
Incorrect. You know that we've had a dialogue where you accused me of messing up the town deal.
Councillors,
It's not correct. Sorry.
I'm not sure whether it's a misogynist thing, but you haven't dialogued with me, Brian. And I have actually sent a full report to the town council a couple of months ago on this very issue. I'm not sure if you've read that even.
Can I just
get right to reply?
I have read all your emails and I've taken it on board, and you actually haven't understood what I've been doing. You haven't taken that on board, and I'm afraid I haven't got anything to say. Calling me misogynist is a complete slur.
Thank you. Councillor Barnett.
I'm sad that Councillor Uten has used an issue of the minutes to raise a lot of other issues, and I feel actually, Councillor Uten, that wasn't appropriate, but I would like to take some of the diffusion out of that, because you very clearly said that you had agreement, that you were given an assurance that as you couldn't be at the meeting that it would be moved, and I would like to hear please why that didn't happen. I wasn't at this meeting.
Thank you.
In a minute, but I would like to hear the answer to that, because that seems to be the pertinent question to do with these minutes at this moment.
Thank you. So I moved the motion under the opportunity afforded for any other councillor to move a motion that's actually been presented to the council on the agenda. Even though you withdrew it, the motion could still go forward. I wasn't aware that Councillor Pryor was no longer seconding the motion. If I had been, I would have asked for a seconder at that point.
She was seconding.
She was seconding.
Yeah, absolutely. I made clear. And I wasn't here as a proposer because my car broke down.
So I moved it forward because I thought that it needed to be voted on, and unfortunately, Councillor, it was not resolved.
No, because I wasn't here. Neither was Councillor Pryor. It wasn't resolved, and so it was defeated. And that is not a resolution. So thank you and good night.
So, councillors, we still going through the minutes of the meeting. We are on page 39.
No, on 38. Sorry, I got waylaid there. The climate emergency, that the minutes are slightly incorrect with regard to the Citizens' Assembly. So this is 145C. And I mentioned about the Citizens' Assembly.
And what it would be looking at would be how to make Glastonbury resilient and adaptable in the face of the climate and ecological emergency. That's what the Citizens' Assembly would be formed to do, not all these other things that have been mentioned. Climate emergency, C, Citizens' Assembly, to look at how we can make Glastonbury resilient and adaptable in the face of the climate and ecological emergency. That's what it would be set up to look at. So far more wide than what has been written here.
So I'm just looking to the clerk to make sure that you've managed to capture those words.
Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. Anything else on page 39? Page 40. Do I have your agreement with the amendments mentioned to sign this off as a true record of the meeting?
I wasn't here, so I won't be voting.
Thank you. So, councillors, we now move on to the next item in the agenda, which is summary of the previous actions from the previous minutes. I would now like to ask Jared to speak to this, please.
Thank you, Richard. There was an action in the previous meeting. There's an action to discuss a site, or to request a site meeting to discuss traffic on Old Wells Road. Do you want me to respond to that now, Your Worship, or should I put that in correspondence later?
Which do you feel is more appropriate? So we'll deal with the correspondence.
The action was to continue with the application for additional allotments on Colmore land, and I can inform that is continuing, and plans have now been run, or are being run, and the bench is reinstated at the High Street. I have contacted Mendon District Council, or I've heard it through Mendon District Council, and asked them to reinstate the benches on the High Street, and their guidance to me was, either with Omicron virus, they asked if I could stay in that decision for a couple of weeks to recognise if indeed the benches had been taken out again, because they informed me that that's the third time they've taken them in and out, and there will be a charge against us should they have to do it again. So I've held back for 2 weeks to determine the state of the Omicron virus. Those are the three actions we're doing.
Thank you.
Your mic's on.
Can you hear?
Oh, I can hear you.
It's green now. Yeah, what was that?
Thank you, Worship.
Thank you. Councillor Radu.
The pursuing the opportunity of alternative allotment sites was not just the common moor one, but to look at ones that were higher up.
I know.
Ian is nodding because he mentioned a couple that it would be good for us to look at. And I know that there'd been talk particularly on Windmill Hill, where the reservoir is, off Lake of Mutton Road was one, Cinnamon Lane, that part there was another one, and to look at these as potential, because we are going to need allotment sites that are not on the levels on the moors, but are actually higher up.
Sandpits. Yep. Thank you very much. So that's noted by the clerk. Thank you. So we now move to receive a police report. I noticed that members of the constabulary here earlier on, have they been called away?
They clearly were called away, Your Worship, but the police report has been circulated and both by email, and it's tabled.
So, councillors, there's a report from PC Katie Moyes here. Can we take this as noted? Aye. Thank you. So we now move on to receive and consider the resolutions, and these are printed on a sheet in our papers tonight from the various committees. I'd like to just say, if we're happy and have read these, if we could note them, or if there are any issue related to any of them that councillors wish to raise.
Worship, if I may, I can come back on Councillor Cole's question that was raised earlier.
Yes.
Under the resolution, so this is where I was going to suggest it came up.
Thank you.
Excuse me 1 second. I'll take it that the planning resolutions are taken as read, Your Worship, unless there's any questions for those. Under the property and assets, I don't intend to go through all of them, of the actions from that Property and Assets Committee which have been resolved, but I was asked to pursue the quotes for 2 gates on footpaths alongside the A39 bypass, if you recall. I have chased Paul Bannell for that, which is one action, and I'm still awaiting a quote from him. And I have also followed up with the Section 106 officer, asking if some funding might have been available for release for that purpose. I've had no response from either, but I will chase it.
Thank you very much. So, apart from that, can we take the resolutions as noted? Oh, Councillor...
sorry, but just a question, a quick question on E, removal of hedgerow.
Yes.
Will that be replanted back once that installation is done?
Yes, it was.
Yes.
Your Worship, if I may, I can expand on that one very briefly to help the councillor. That is for the new water main to go from Wells to Glastonbury. It's an incredibly long distance, and it was a specific hedgerow, but you can be assured it will be replaced.
Thank you. That was one of the questions that actually came up during the meeting and was resolved. Yes, thank you, Councillor. So, any other points on the resolutions? We move forward to receive County Councillor reports.
Neither of the County Councillor is present, and I haven't received any reports to be tabled.
Thank you. So we might return to this if Councillor Lyshon appears this evening. To receive District Council reports, I would like to earnestly thank the councillors who've provided written reports. I have not made a written report myself because I have not had much activity on Mendip Council, although I did attend the full council meeting, which was a very interesting affair due to the COVID restrictions. It meant that enough councillors were present to be quorate, to be able to vote on the issues in a way that was indicated by the rest of the councillors who were remote. And I think it worked rather successfully. And it was a very useful and good meeting, but there wasn't anything particularly Glastonbury-centred that I can report back on. But if I've missed it, my fellow councillors, I'm sure, will pick me up on it. Could we go to Councillor Henderson next?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I have submitted a very short written report which did concern the local plan part 2, and just mentioned that this now clears the way for the adoption of the neighbourhood plan.
Thank you very much. Councillor McDougall. Is there anything you wish to add to your written report or highlight?
Oh, I don't know. I'm trying to find it. Yeah, I think adding to what you said about full council at the local plan part 2, we have the opportunity of saving our green spaces because that was removed from the local plan part 2. Our neighbourhood plan should address that, so people may be interested to know that.
Thank you very much. And Councillor Cottle.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I'm going to take this off because I can't speak with it very well on. Yeah, firstly, I haven't been overly busy with actual council work as such. I will go with you on the idea that we used at full council, which was a way to avoid too many people being in the room at one go. We worked on outside and it worked. I believe you were one of the people who represented the Green Party on there.
That's right, yeah.
My memory's quite good for that sort of thing, John. And it did tend to work. I was lucky, I avoided going because I didn't particularly want to be in the room. Like, I'm not overly happy being in the room this evening, here. And, but it worked, and so that's fine, and we'll have to continue with that, or something similar, until our glorious government sees some common sense and reinstates some legislation.
Yes.
I can't do anything about it. We have found a way around it for other meetings at Mendip, as Dawn is well aware of, which I don't think he explained, about where if we get together for scrutiny, we can do it remotely, and then it's an unofficial body, and then we give it to the chairman, not the chairman, the CEO of the council, Stuart, to enforce, and that way we can get around it. So it works, it will work. So I just wanted to sort of clarify that a bit, which is brilliant. Another thing, which made me extremely happy, in fact ecstatic, some of my group at Mendip would say, is the fact that we have got our independence back from Street. We will now have, as you are aware, I think you've all been informed, we're going to have 2 councillors for Glastonbury and 2 councillors for Street, separate.
Hooray.
People in Glastonbury will be able to vote for their own person, or per people. And I think that's the most important thing of ever. And the same with Street. I think that they needed to have that. Because we're very different communities. And it was something that was really, really annoying me. So this afternoon in the meeting, I did thank Terry and Liz for being the one and onlys to represent the two towns, and said thank you to them, because I'm of the opinion Liz isn't here. Liz will not be standing for here at the next election, and obviously Terry is a street person as well, so he'll be in the street standing. So it'll be a different setup. So I think that's something to look forward, and it's going to be challenging, because this is something that nobody mentioned except myself before, and now I've seen it in print, that the people who represent on the Unitary Council in Wiltshire, on average, do 27 hours work a week. Now this is something for anybody who is considering standing to remember, and it'll be driving all over the county, it'll be all this sort of stuff, and then 27 hours a week is what they do in Wiltshire, average, and it's a big ask. And I think it's got an issue, because people who actually work for a living are going to struggle to be able to do it, and they won't be able to do it properly, as simple as that. And so we'll have to see what happens. It's difficult times. As we've seen again tonight here, our own town council's got difficult issues. There's issues, but this is going to be nothing compared to what this thing is going to bring forward. So that's all I've got to say this evening. I'm not going to go into a long rant on anything else.
Thank you, Councillor. Any questions for us district councillors? So Councillor Barnett, Councillor Keary and Councillor Coles.
Thank you, Lindsay, for your report, and particularly the information on the Somerset bus partnership, which I was very pleased to see that you're involved in. But I wanted to ask a question, which is that because this town is a bit like an octopus with tentacles going in different directions, all the directions except for going out to Shepton Mallet have bus stops, and going out through Beer Lane, through Chilkwell Street into Causey and Batchelor now has no bus stops except for the tour bus that stops outside Chalicewell on its circuit. And there's quite a lot of us now who are in the older department and who would like to use buses, but they don't stop. And I was really hoping that at some time when buses get reviewed, that's going to be considered, but also that the Wells bus station, which gives out information about buses, does not give out information about buses between Glastonbury, Shepton Mallet and Frome. And that actually, because the communities are all quite small, except for Frome, most of us are, when we travel, are going to different townships for different things. And I really feel, and I would really advocate to this council, that we actually work on and campaign for better provision on that part of the town as far as stops are concerned, and better provision for information and actual clarity. The Shepton Mallet bus is supposed to stop at the Rural Life Museum, but that's only coming into town because that's a pull-off, but that pull-off is parked in the whole time, and most of the bus drivers have been told by friends of mine out in the villages who come in, don't want to stop there. So they go into town, and then to come back, they have to walk a mile. That's not always such an easy thing for people with less mobility or with age. So I don't know how to forward that.
I do, don't we?
Can I answer?
Yes, of course.
I will flag that up with them. The thing about information has been noted widely by the people feeding into the bus strategy. That stop, I absolutely agree with you, and it is marked as a stop that should be stopped at, but they don't. So I will flag that up.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, Councillor Keary.
Thank you, Worship. Councillor Cottle said that it was good news that Street and Glastonbury were being separated. Unfortunately, it's bad news if we're going to lose council relation. In all my years on the council, I don't think I've seen a councillor, and she's just come into the room, that has been so tenacious, given us so much clear information, and just basically kept business going with the district and the county council indeed, in a form that has forced them in many respects, I think, through her hard work, to make decisions and get things done. And heaven knows it is a hard job to get things moving, and we probably have seen more things moving in the time she's been chasing them than again over many years. So that's bad news for Glastonbury that she won't be standing here. And if we get candidates and councillors anywhere close to her ability and what she's done, then that would be a good thing. But she deserves, I think, every praise for what she's done while she's been working for us.
If only she was here to... Oh, she is. I must say, even though I have always been standing against cancellation in the last few elections, if I wasn't standing against her, I'd be voting for her. So I wholeheartedly agree. Councillor Coles.
Thank you, Worship. Surfing the net, I see your emails, and you've decided to stand for the unitary.
Well, I've got to be selected first, John.
Oh, yes, you have.
Yeah.
Question is, who is the other one? Because there's two. There'll be two vacancies. Do you know?
Can I answer this? The fact that I haven't even been selected yet by my party, who I am a member of, I may be an approved candidate now, but I haven't been selected. I would have no clue. Who else from outside, from the Conservative Party, the Green Party, an independent, another Liberal Democrat who I don't know? I have no clue who will be standing as a Liberal Democrat. I don't even know if I'll be standing as a Liberal Democrat here, or whether I'll be asked to go somewhere else. You don't know, and I certainly don't know who else will be standing.
I needed to ask.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Smythe.
Can we stick to the agenda, please?
Yes, of course, but I think it was a very entertaining question. Thank you very much, Councillor Coles. So, before we move forward, Councillor Cottle's excellent description of the process of resolving proposed resolutions or indicated resolutions from committees that were held online has prompted me to raise a point of order with the clerk, which is that we must formally resolve the resolutions on this sheet, which I overlooked. I would like to propose that this council formally resolves the resolutions on these sheets. These are indicative resolutions made online, which of course are not lawful until they are resolved in this meeting face to face. I would propose these resolutions. Do I have a seconder?
Well, whoever. Yeah.
So Councillor Tucker was in there first. Anybody wish to speak against this mass resolution? Councillor Smythe.
Clarifications, this excludes presumably those under the Finance General Purposes Committee, because that's going to be discussed as a separate item.
No, we have to formally,
Well, we don't have a list of the resolutions until a separate item is discussed.
well, if there are no resolutions on this sheet, then we can't resolve them. Now, I'm talking about the resolutions that are printed on this sheet.
Okay.
We need to formally resolve them tonight. So can I have a show of hands of all those in favour of resolving the resolutions on the sheet? Thank you, that's everyone, unanimous.
Worship.
Thank you. There's a technical hitch. If anybody from the Cabinet in London is watching our live stream tonight, or the repeat after they've heard how exciting the meeting has been, please could you consider allowing parish and district and county councils to meet online formally and make resolutions online. Thank you very much, Boris. We now move forward to...
Worship, I wonder if we could go back to the county council's reports. It might give Councillor Leighton a chance to get home early once she's made her report, and I'm sure she would be glad of that.
Well, Councillor Kirry, you took the words out of my mouth, but I have a request from Councillor Ronnie Dougal.
It was the same thing, but Liz has come, please come with.
Yes, I was going to say now we move forward to the county councillor reports. Councillor Leighton.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just to explain, I've been at an extraordinary meeting of Street Parish Council and Councillor Napper again sends his apologies. I do have, this is hot off the press, as you might say, a report about the multi-agency group. So I had a briefing this afternoon from two of the officers at County. There will be an update coming out from the multi-agency group, so you may get more detail from them over the next week. We discussed the plans for Bretonneau Road and the requirement for some decent consultation with residents, which the clerk knows about and has very kindly offered to help distribute through the staff of this council, and I completely agree with that. It would be totally wrong, in my view, to press ahead with a scheme, no matter how desirable to me, to you, to anyone else, unless enough residents had had a chance to have their say. And the trouble is, these days it's very easy to think that if something is put out in one form or another, whether it be social media or a press release, that covers everyone, and it clearly doesn't. And actually, I think the intention now is that a letter goes through every letterbox on the Redlands estate, as it has done on a number of occasions in the past, and I think that is absolutely the right and fair thing to do. If any of you wonder why the plans are to put a multi-user path and then make the rest of Bretonneau Road beyond the first bit one way, it's because although that road is very long and very straight and very wide, it's not actually wide enough to take 2 lanes of traffic and a multi-user path, because you need, I think it's 6.6 metres for 2 lanes of traffic, and then you need 3 metres for a multi-user path, and that is under the government's own guidelines for multi-user paths, which came in last year, called LTN 120. If this had been done 2 years ago, the County Council could have made a narrower multi-user path. They could have made it 2 metres, but now, because it's active travel money paying for it, it has to be 3 metres, and that leaves the width just short. So that's why there has to be the multi-user path, and then most of Bretonneau Road is proposed to become one way. That has caused confusion with some residents who think that the whole estate is going to become one way. That is not the intention. But the letter that goes through every letterbox will have a link in it to the drawings. What it won't do is put a copy of the full drawings through every letterbox, because that would be prohibitively expensive because they're massive drawings, such a long road. So there's that one. On Stone Down, we've been pursuing the issue of why that has not been completed already. And I've now put County in touch with Mendip about whether some of the materials, which you might recognise if you saw them, because they're quite large and quite hard, and there are some left over at Pompal's Bridge, so we're trying to get those moved and used at Stone Down Lane. There has been a slot booked on the highway, but that was this month about now, and it doesn't look as if the contractors are going to have a hope of reaching that. But County keep telling me there is a continuing commitment. I know there is ongoing disquiet and concern from residents, farmers and visitors, and so we won't stop on that. Wellhouse Lane, the issues for the contractors of refreshing all the markings there are how many leaves, how much mud, how much time it would take to clear it and then dry the road so that they can put down the markings and they stick. So there are two options. One is an emergency traffic regulation order to close the road for a period of time, to clean it, allow it to dry, depends on weather, and then lay down again all the markings. So that one is being pursued. Jeff Bunting is helping on that. There's some more enforcement coming in other areas of town. We've seen Kennard-Moore Road and Bretonneau Road van numbers increasing, of course, every time. We all know, every time there's enforcement in one area, it has a knock-on effect. I'm sure most of you know about National Trust doing the work to put the new hedgerow and fencing up through the Moneybox field, which did get vandalised at one point. I don't know if that's been replaced, the dock fence. There's work on a public space protection order going on by Mendip, looking at either town-wide or maybe a bit further. I think that got to town. I don't know whether you've got it. Before I made comments about use of some language in it that I found intemperate and unwelcome, about take back control and words like that. And I suggested some options that were a bit more friendly and a bit more about regaining balance rather than taking back control. There's been some talk that really resonated with me about where we're working on traveller sites, both permanent and transit, that the expectation in Somerset will be to work right across the county, because of course once we become a unitary it will become one boundary, it won't be 4 districts, but that the provision in Glastonbury would be proportionate to the size of the town and its population, not proportionate to the demand. And I think that that is a really important statement, and we all need to bear that in mind. We have, some of us on the Town Deal Board are going to have a briefing about land use in the Beckery area coming up soon. And some of the COVID money from the County Council has gone across to Mendip for a health outreach worker to work with the housing outreach worker in Mendip, particularly looking at Glastonbury. So that's a quick canter through the briefing that I had today. I'm sure there are lots of other things happening. With local government reorganisation and the forthcoming election, I don't think I've ever known it be quite so busy. And we had, I'm not sure if, I think Gerard received it, a response from Highways about Old Wells Road, which was not very encouraging, was it? And I've got some other people from Watts Corner asking about speed limits in Old Wells Road, but I didn't read that as very encouraging at all, the response.
Gerard, would you like to speak to this?
I would.
Okay, right, I'll leave that one to you. Okay, I'm happy to take any questions, but that's my most up-to-date position on Glastonbury items.
Thank you, Liz. Thank you for coming over here to attend this meeting after already being at another meeting.
Your Worship, I have to say thank you all for your kind words. It really matters to me that we get some decent solutions and that actually politics plays no part in them.
Thank you. Serena, did I see you have your hand raised or no?
Well, I did, but then Liz talked about the potential for traveller sites giving us the usual bad news. So that was...
I see.
She answered it.
Thank you. Lindsay McDougall.
I echo your shock at the wording, take back control. I was dismayed that that was included in this document. I'm not quite sure who drafted it, but that aside, I'm going to say, can we as a council lobby nationally, national government, for the reasons why we have a homelessness problem here and a massive roadside dwellers issue? It's because of all the issues to do with housing and how land is used, how land is owned, how land is taxed. We need to lobby nationally. That is where the real problem is, that the legislation is not being designed to solve the housing problems nationally. It's a national problem.
Thank you. Councillor McDougall, I'd be very happy if you wish to draft something up. Be very happy for you to bring that to the council so that we can make a decision on that.
Certainly will. Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Barnett.
Thank you. Thank you for your good report. And Lindsay, you've said part of what I was going to say. But in the proposal that was sent out, that was in our bundle, pre-consultation, raises an issue for me that I'm sort of seeing as something coming towards us at rather a fast pace. It doesn't really, I think, come under MAG. I'm not sure with all the changes where it will come under, but any of the rest of you who watch the South News will know about the huge numbers in both Newquay and Torquay of people who are actually were residents of those towns, who work in those towns, whose children go to those schools, whose families may live there, who are now living in vans and now are confronted because they've become homeless because of the huge private sector rental rises. And I don't know how many private sector rental properties we actually have in Glastonbury, and I know it changes, but I think there's actually quite a number of them. And as many of the wages in this locality are minimum wage or only just above that, I kind of wonder whether we should be talking or asking the district or the county or the new unitary to actually be making a strategy for how this should be dealt with, because I feel it's going to come towards us very quickly. There may already be some people in vans who've met that. I know several people who are now in a position where they can't pay the level of rent, who presumably, unless they're fortunate and are able to find the few places that are within a rate that they can afford, that actually we focus. I know there's a lot going on, but I feel there's a need for focus on a strategy about how we might want to deal with as towns to support people who are in that position. And I'm sure it's probably going to affect all of us councillors, are probably going to get people approaching us about it. I've already had two. But that we actually are asking the district or unitary or whoever's taking on the strategy about how that wants to be dealt with, and whether we actually want to look at lobbying the government, who at one time, quite a long time ago, when I was renting in London, had a cap on the amount of rent that could be asked for particular size properties, and it was quite a detailed thing. So officers from the borough would come and assess what the right rent should be, and it should be affordable. I don't think we can afford to sit back on our haunches, because it's going to be overrun, and a lot of our residents are going to be really, really in a bad position over this, and I'm not sure where that should go, but it feels like pre-planning is needed.
Thank you. Councillor Elijah.
I can give a response on that, Your Worship. One is a human story and really upsetting, which is somebody I've come across who works in the street and lives a bit further away and would prefer not to be spending on petrol and driving to work every day. So has been bidding on Home Finder for a one-bedroom property in Glastonbury or Street. And I asked him where he came in the bidding last week, because that gives you a really good indication of whether he might be successful. He was 223rd in the bidding. That gives you an idea of how few properly affordable properties there are in this area. And I understand that this particular bit of Somerset is particularly stretched. The only good news I can give you is that once we get to the unitary, because Somerset West and Taunton, the council that was Taunton Deane, they kept their housing stock, so they've kept a housing revenue account. Now, if that housing revenue account then becomes the whole unitary, then the unitary can sensibly move into building more housing. And the county council, of course, does have land. It doesn't have much land in this area, but in other parts of Somerset, it does have significant county farm holdings, some of which may be appropriate for housing. So, but in the short term, we have got a housing crisis, which we haven't seen since, I'd say, just after the Second World War, when prefab houses were built. We're in the same position, I believe.
Yes. Councillor Tucker?
Your Worship, I wanted to speak about something else, but I will follow up on this and just remind this council that Councillor Keary and I did withdraw a motion because the town council does own some land which has got, now part 2 has been approved, approval for building houses on. So don't start blaming everybody else. We could actually do something about it ourselves, owned by the town or by the new group under the unitary. So let's look at ourselves first before we start pushing it out to everybody else. I'll just get that out of the way. Can I please, Liz, could you see whether we can get Basketfield Lane drains cleared and the bit of Pennard Road? It's obviously all the same drain system, but it's flooding. It has frozen once, but the water's right across the road. It is lethal when it freezes. There is going to be really serious accident there if we don't deal with it. Going out through Pennard Road, the water splashes right across both carriageways. I know they've got ice signs up, but you know, it's lethal to walk. You get soaking if you're walking, and there's vehicles can't but drive in the water, so they're drowning the people walking along the pavement. And it just needs the gully sucker out there to try and get it all cleaned out again.
That area outside of Mary's house is bad again.
Right down through.
Yeah.
There is a really big issue there. I went there in the pouring rain one day, and there is a really big issue about water running so far, then coming out of the drains instead of down the drains. I think there may be overflow from the Ashwell Lane reservoir. I've seen it coming out beside there like a fountain. And there is a house on the straight stretch of road that is in really big trouble, and that is just a dispute between BT and the county council. Because BT has got chambers all along there, they all fill up with water, and you can see the water bubbling up through the manhole, and then, you know, the whole road will be dry and there's still water there.
Do I give Councillor Tucker a right to reply?
But it is the drains, it's the county council drains that are blocked. If they weren't blocked, then the water wouldn't be migrating into the telephone chambers, the telephone chambers are acting as a second system of drainage. It's the county council drains that are blocked, and they're blocked from halfway up Basketfield Lane. And I did raise it back in the summer and say, it's a long time away, but it will be freezing soon, and it's already frozen once.
Councillor Napper is seriously on it too, and I regret to say we've not made any progress, but maybe I could walk the Basketfield Lane and actually mark where the gullies are that need clearing.
It's simple.
My experience is if you just tell them a gully in a road, they'll come along and do the one gully. I gave them a crossroads once, and they did one gully, but not the other three. It's ridiculous.
County highways.
Yeah, I'm not going to, I won't say anything.
So, Councillor McDougall?
Cross about it.
So, with all due respect to those who have been on the council for a long time, have massive experience, the issue to do with housing is a national problem. To expect Glastonbury, that is constrained on three sides by the floodplains, I suggest it would be folly to keep on building with climate change hurtling down at a tremendous rate. And I trust that this whole council would support me and support a venture to address it at national level.
Thank you. Councillor Henderson.
Thank you, Chair. This is a small problem. There's two signs in the High Street pointing to St John's School, and they would like a third sign along by the hub, directing people there, because apparently that is an entrance, and they've had a lot of people who can't find the school on Archer's Way. So remember the Board of Governors had asked me if I could, I don't know whether that is a county issue or whether that would be mended, but I thought as we're asking you questions.
School, I believe.
That's right on the board. There is a telegraph pole there, which could possibly be a place to house a sign, but keep that in mind, or if you want me to do a bit more investigation, I will.
Yeah, maybe I'll meet you there.
Yeah, sure. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Smythe.
In relation to the Westbury Road works and Stone Down works, I understand that Westbury Road originally anticipated to be completed in April, and Stone Down is hoping to complete in January. Have you got any revised completion dates for both of these two schemes, bearing in mind that economics and budgeting is rapidly approaching? If you can't guarantee Stone Down Lane to be completed by that, and both of those dates very close to that, April and May, weekend, could we recommend as a road project, as we did for the millennium celebrations along Glastonbury and Stone Down, to ensure safety of the residents without the issues and impact with emergency
I have to look at that, because my understanding from the conversations I've already had with officers is if those roads were to be closed, if they're being closed by highways in order to clean the road and refresh the lines, that's a highways activity. If the road is being closed because of the number of people on foot, pedestrians, then there has to be an event organiser. So then the question becomes, who is the event organiser? They've managed to push the National Trust into preparing a plan for events. So we've got them to do that, but they will not go as far as, my understanding is, they will not look at road closures, because that they don't consider that part of the event to be their issue. Their issue is what happens on the tour and the Moneybox Field and surrounding fields. So it's about who owns the event, who applies for the road closure, and so on.
Councillor Smythe, right to reply.
I just like to say these events aren't owned by anyone. They are historical, their nature. There isn't a leader, there isn't an organiser. It's actually fixed dates in the pagan calendar. Both of those, but one's Bristol Day, So it's a question of the well-being and safety of the residents in order to access the vehicles to come through. So I'm very much aware that we have an election on the 7th of May, and it will reflect very badly on this council and on district Somerset County if there is a problem that has been over the last 2 years.
Your Worship, I'll take it back and ask again. The last time I asked, I was told there had to be an event organiser.
There is no event organiser.
Well, thank you. I totally understand the complexities and subtleties within this. Council, I will just remind you that this council voted earnestly to adopt, to observe our standing orders to only speak once on any subject and also to only speak for 3 minutes. Having said that, I'm very happy to exercise standing order right to reply, but I do see 2 councillors wishing to speak again. Councillors, bearing in mind what I've just said, do you still wish to speak, Councillor Henderson?
No.
Councillor McDougall?
Very short one. Would this town council be allowed to be the event organiser?
Where was that loaded gun?
Somebody's got to do it.
Right. I think that's something to discuss with councillors and come back to the table around, perhaps. Any other questions from councillors who haven't asked a question for the county councillor?
Your Worship, I'll just add too that I spent a great deal of time last week and over the weekend meeting with all the groups at Tor Leisure, all of the clubs, and going through all of their requests, requirements, needs, and I'm now putting all of that together for the project manager so that I can help him get a running start on putting together the plans for Tor Leisure. And every one of the 5 groups I spoke to, so fusion football, cricket, bowls and acrobatic gymnastics, gave me their time freely, pleasantly and very constructively. It was a very useful couple of days work that I did with them. So I really hope it bears fruit. And I went down there today actually stepping out how big that site is, Tor Leisure, because nobody seems to be able to give me a scale drawing of that. If anyone's got a scale drawing, please let me have it. It's actually, that building site is bigger than I thought it was. Quite, promisingly bigger than I thought it was. So we'll see.
Thank you,
Interesting times ahead, Your Worship. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Dyson. So I, using the power I have through standing orders to alter the agenda, I would like to move item 15 up to be the next item, because there is item 15B has information that will be pertinent to the subsequently then following items, which is about setting precept. So I would like to move, if you may minute this, Gerard, item 15 to become the new item 11, and then the other items to move down appropriately. So we will receive reports from advisory committees. Councillor Tucker, are you happy to speak to the Frost Fair?
Yeah, Your Worship, although I think there's probably little to say apart from that we did make a decision actually in the finance meeting that we would be refunding the people who couldn't trade, which I think is fair, because that was obviously can have an implication on the finances. And we haven't, because of Christmas and New Year, had an opportunity for a wash-up meeting, but we've got that in mind to do.
Thank you. I would like to speak to Glastonbury and Bloom. I see Councillor Smythe's name is down against this, but I do believe that I am the Deputy Chair.
Yes, I wonder why my name appears against this every month since I.
So perhaps we could amend that on the agenda for future meetings, at least until May, that if there's a report from in Bloom, considering that Councillor Pryor is unwell at the moment, it may be me rather than Councillor Smythe who's reporting back. The information that I need to alert this council to was in the minutes of the meeting of Bloom from October. And unfortunately, this had got overlooked in subsequent conversations around the setting of the precept. This was in item 18 of the October meeting. There was a proposal and a seconded motion that was resolved through this committee, which met in person. Councillor Barnett proposed that Glastonbury and Bloom Committee request to increase their budget by £3,000, seconded by Councillor Much. It was resolved to request further funding for the Glastonbury and Bloom Committee due to increase of the costs of plants watering and the subsidised baskets. So that request for £3,000, I don't believe, was put into the conversation and discussion that we had around setting the precept. And I would like to highlight that now before we reach the item, which is now new item 15, to set the precept. So please bear that in mind, councillors. Apart from that, Glastonbury and Bloom met last night online as a lovely meeting, and it's coming on very well. It's blooming, you could say. So now we move to climate emergency. Councillor Ronnie Dougal.
So we didn't actually have a meeting just before Christmas because it was Christmas. So the next meeting is going to be the 21st of January. But I would like to remind people that from the last meeting, the report, there was a request that people try the different carbon footprint calculators, which are on the climate emergency page of the Glastonbury Town Council website, because it would be really useful to have your feedback as to which of the three that Melissa's put up there is what you consider to be both accurate and readily accessible and amenable to use, because we would quite like to suggest one, the best, that we could then send out to everyone in town in order to alert them to looking at their carbon footprint as a way to start a whole process for them to lower their carbon output. Just a way of sort of making people aware. And people in the climate emergency group are doing these three calculators and are sending their feedback in. But it would be helpful to have a slightly wider basis on which to choose the best one. So we'd really appreciate it. Email me with what you think about them. And that would be really helpful.
Thank you. Would it be useful to send the email with the links on to councillors again?
Well, it's the climate emergency page of the Glastonbury Town Council website. So it's our website, and it's the climate emergency page, and the links that Melissa's put on there down at the bottom of the page. But yes, we could, Joe, I'd maybe put those links into.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Well, I'll email. I could email them out, Joe. Would that be better?
Yes.
I email those links,
Indeed.
and then it's right there, and you don't have any excuse for not doing it.
Thank you, and I expect to hear everybody's footprint at the next meeting. We might make an agenda item. Who has the lowest carbon emissions in the council?
I'll make sure that
Are you intending to speak to something around that?
No, I won't actually. I'm being slightly cynical.
Okay, thank you. The last item is item D, the Queen Elizabeth II Platinum Jubilee. That group is meeting on tomorrow night at 7 o'clock, and we're meeting in the council chamber. I've taken that decision as I'm now the chair. I think that we do need to sit round the table and discuss, and it has been set to be at this meeting, and I'm so long as people wear masks, I'm hoping they'll be able to socially distance. But I've encouraged quite a number of people to come along, and I'm not sure all of them would be able to attend if they came on Zoom. So that is tomorrow night. Councillors, I would love as many councillors as feel comfortable coming to a meeting in this room to come to that meeting tomorrow night. And we will review where we're at and try and think of how we can celebrate. What I can say is one decision that I made an executive decision about, I do apologise for this, but time was of the essence, is that Her Majesty came to the throne on the 6th of February. And that is actually the celebratory date, in reality, of her 70th year of reign. That's when it starts, when it occurs, when the anniversary occurs. So I have asked Scarlett, who has been extremely on it, I think is the right term to phrase, to, on that date when the main hall was free, which is a Sunday, we are going to have 3 screenings, socially distanced and all that, but 3 screenings of the Alice Buckton silent movie, Glastonbury, Past, Present, Future. So if you have never seen that film, would like to see it in its glory on a big screen, it will be on the anniversary of Queen becoming the Queen on the 6th of February in the main hall. It'll be a free event. It'll be limited by the number of people who can attend, obviously because of COVID, the restrictions, but it will be happening. That's why we're screening it 3 times, and we'll publish more information about that shortly. But I needed to move on it because it took quite a while to get the film, and we weren't sure whether or not we'd get the license in time, and waiting for the meeting we wouldn't have been able to do it.
Film Alison Buckton.
Alice Buckton made, yeah, 1922. So it's the 100th, the pertinency of that, of course, is it's the 100th anniversary also of that film, which is a lovely tie-in. So I have nothing else to say on Platinum Jubilee. Do come along tomorrow night. So now we move on to item 12, to receive the budget monitoring report. That was in your papers, councillors. I must congratulate the responsible finance officer for giving us such an excellent set of notes with the report this time. We're looking for this, councillors. The notes are on the front, so it doesn't look like normal. So, councillors, any comments on any of the report? Councillor Barnett.
It's a very small one, but I don't remember St John's clock for £175 ever appearing on this before.
It is on there every month, councillor.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Sorry, I own up to blindness.
I think if you see a Romulan cloaking device underneath it, you'll understand why.
That's why, yeah. Even the Klingons got one mind.
Any other comments?
Just to say, Your Worship, in spite of the difficult year that we've had, the car park takings are approaching the level that we would have expected. And indeed, talking to traders in the high street, again, many of them appear to have had a very good year, possibly because foreign holidays have been difficult and people have been staying at home, and the town has been pretty busy during the summer, which is great.
Absolutely, and that's fantastic, isn't it, to see that we're really doing quite well, all things considered. Gerard, the parking takings, I take it, are not subsidised by any other fund, are they? That is definitely, no, so it's right.
It is, yeah.
Right.
Sorry, Chairman. Just to say, Your Worship, in spite of the difficult year that we've had, the car park takings are approaching the level that we would have expected. And indeed, talking to traders in the high street, again, many of them appear to have had a very good year, possibly because foreign holidays have been difficult and people have been staying at home, and the town has been really doing quite well, considering all things considered.
Any other points, councillors? I think the council could convey its thanks once again to the responsible finance officer for such an excellent set of notes to go along with the report. Councillors, we now have new item 13, which is a schedule of payments. Any observations?
Your Worship, if I... Oh, sorry, Councillor.
Councillor Randugal.
I was just going to ask, we noticed my brother came down from Manchester for Christmas in his electric car, which he was very proud of, and he tried to charge it in our car park, and one of the machines wasn't working. I remember there'd been a problem with it before, and I know that it tried to be fixed, but there was a problem with it again over Christmas, and I was just wondering if it had been fixed yet.
Thank you. In response to that particular question, that problem has been, once it was attended to and fixed, but broke the same day, and it has been reported for a second time, and the company have yet to come back out and deal with it. But we're aware of it. Your Worship, if I may, can I just draw your attention to an explanation, or make an explanation, if I may, for 1189 and 1190.
Yes.
It looks as if it's exactly the same thing, purchased twice. It's because we couldn't get a supply of light bulbs from one place, we had to go to two different places.
Thank you very much. Councillor Henderson?
Chair, just clarification, item 1187, what are or is Michael's split roads?
In response, Your Worship, it's all of the mayors and deputy mayors' gowns, the town clerk's gown, all of those are provided to us from a company called Michael's Robes. And they're based in Bristol. In this particular case, we purchased a new tricorn hat for the deputy mayor.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yourself one day, Steve.
You're still wearing it going out.
I do understand, councillor, that using somebody's first name in a business is quite popular these days. Michael's, it's interesting to note, supply the Lord Mayor of London with his robes, or her robes. So
nothing but the best.
Nothing but the best for us. Unfortunately, the tricorn hat is not quite big enough for me to be a pirate rather than Duke of Wellington, but there we are. Any other items? Do I have your agreement to sign this off? Thank you. And while I do, oh yes, I've signed the wrong bit. While I do, we move on to new item 14, to consider the recommendations of the Finance and General Purposes Committee 22-23 budget. The budget should be in your papers, summary budget 22-23. I would like to ask Gerard, would you be happy to speak to this and guide us through it, or should I ask Councillor Keary?
I'll start, Your Worship, but I would encourage Councillor Keary to come in behind me. Inasmuch that we, the Finance and General Purposes Committee meeting last month, deliberated all of the expenditure and income for the Town Council, and recognising the want to minimise, I guess, the increase in precept, the recommendation before you this evening is that we can balance the budget, but I hasten to add, with the £3,000 from the Bloom has not been included in this balance, and we can balance the budget without having to raise the precept on a Band D premises. And Councillor Keary may wish to come in behind me.
So, Councillor Keary, would you like to speak to this?
Only to say, Your Worship, that the Town Clerk Council said about how we managed to balance the budget. If you remember, the meeting was indeed very late. I think it was after 10 o'clock when we finally made the decision to go with the balanced budget. Councillor Cottle raised a problem which I don't think we really talked about because it was so late in the evening we moved on. And the problem is that we all know that inflation, which is going to affect all of us, is probably running at 6%. or thereabouts, and that it will be a double-edged sword because it will make people suffer in many respects over heating bills and other aspects of the housing and everything else. At the same time, I think probably reflecting on having a balanced budget, people might think, well, in the circumstances of this inflation, perhaps the town council should be making some allowance to take this inflation into account. The problem with not dealing with some inflation in some form is that the next year it becomes an even bigger problem.
Absolutely, absolutely, that's my issue.
We have some years back, I remember, over a number of years, decided we would hold the precept, and eventually got to the point where we had to have quite a major increase, and the whole town was up in arms because of the increase that had to be done to meet the costs that had increased over the years. I would just like to bring to the council attention that by agreeing this, holding this budget, we have not taken into account this inflationary aspect, and that perhaps it would be wise to consider that we would write in some inflation, and perhaps, although we're told maybe 6% or who knows what, that even if we put in something like 3% to allow, it would mitigate the chances of future council finding that they have to increase the precept by a more substantial amount at a later date, which may not be to the benefit or interest of the community. So I just would raise that point and ask councillors to A, take in the £3,000 for the Glastonbury in Bloom, and B, consider whether at this point we should make some allowance for inflation that we all know is coming and that is going to affect some of the items in the precept.
Thank you. So I have a number of hands raised. Councillor Cottle, then Councillor McDougall, and then Councillor Henderson.
Thank you, Your Worship. And thank you, Councillor Curry, because I haven't lobbied you and asked you to do this. You came to your own decision in your own time, etc., which is a very important one to remember, and which I think in any business, or which we are running a business here, if you make a fundamental mistake by not rising by inflation as the year goes by, it becomes extremely difficult in the end. At some stage, you get to a crunch point. We've had this before where certain councils have not raised the council tax and then have got themselves into all sorts of trouble and had to make huge rises at the end. It's great to have a flat budget and not to raise it, but it doesn't work. In today's world, I'm afraid, you have to go with inflation and you have to raise your prices. And the same goes for this. That's my personal opinion. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McDougall.
So I take your point about inflation. We don't know what that figure is at the moment, and we do have a healthy
5-6%.
Well, to be fair, that hasn't been all last year. 5%.
That's the forecast.
It's all very uncertain, and we do have a healthy balance, as I understand it, and we've got good prospects. So I would say that in on the other side of the coin.
Thank you, Councillor Henderson.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I was going to suggest that if Councillor Keary or Councillor Cottle would like to propose that inflationary addition, I'll second that.
Thank you. Would anyone else wish to speak against that motion? Councillor McDougall.
Well, we have raised, we haven't kept it static, because I seem to remember over the sort of 7 years that I've been a councillor, we have raised it at certain points. So it's not like we've done like other councils that we know of locally and practically bankrupted things.
Thank you, Councillor Henderson.
Thank you, Chair. I would just like to point out, I think that whenever we have raised the precept, it's always been with good reason. We've given reasons why we've done that, and we've fulfilled those promises or the reasons we've used the money wisely.
Thank you. Would anyone wish to speak for the motion?
Can I just speak?
Yes.
Because I think the problem is that the general public are going to be hit with national insurance rises. They're going to be hit. We've already heard the rents are going up ridiculously. It's a dilemma for me. I did talk with Councillor Kieran this morning about this. I certainly, if we're going to put in a figure, I think it needs to be a minimal figure, just if you feel there's a need for it. But we have gone through these figures really carefully, and we've allowed for the growth where we think, so we think that these are the right figures to cover us for next year. That was what we've done. And we have built in, there is some built-in fat for the future, because we've put in a figure for the GIC, but it's a one-year only figure. We've put in because we've got we've got an extra officer who will drop out in a year's time when Jared retires. So there will be some monies back to give us a bit of headway, or a new council a bit of headway in the future. So I think we need to be really careful how we think about this before we suddenly stick another bill on the ratepayers that we don't necessarily have to at this really tricky time. So I'm torn, to be honest. I think we've come up with a balanced budget. It'll be very much now a council's decision as to whether you actually feel you need to add a little bit more to give the new council a bit of leeway. But if you do, then I would encourage you to keep that to the absolute minimum.
Councillor Henderson, right of reply.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I take on board what Councillor Tucker said. I think it's very wise words, and maybe a smaller reduction would be a better idea.
So, Councillor
Cottle.
Okay, I'll go with 3%.
No, we said 3 to start with. So I think.
Well, we said 3.
I mean, we could say.
Yes, you did.
We could say 1 then, as a sort of. I mean, that would cover the £3,000.
So, councillors, can I just, so let me, before we get into what the proposal might be amended to, I see other councillors wishing to speak. Councillor Smythe?
I don't know whether this is appropriate, but obviously there have been other house building going on within the Glastonbury parish over the last year. So the actual income from the council tax will be greater as a result of these occupations, particularly 150 on the new estate on the floodplain, God forbid, but it's there. That is a significant increase for our income from the precinct. There may be others that I don't know as well. Watts Corner was a long time ago, and so was Sharpen Road estate, but this one certainly is a new one, completed within the last year.
Yes. So what Councillor Smythe is saying is that we could see a council tax base increase in the coming year, which will obviously have an impact on the amount and what that brings into us. What I'm minded of, councillors, is that last year we made a decision not to increase. And because we weren't fully aware of what the council tax base was, we were all quite surprised to see that we did increase last year by 3%, even though we didn't intend to. And I wonder whether councillors should take that in mind. We've been through 2 very hard years on everyone in this town. And we wanted to try and alleviate that by not increasing the council tax last year, but unfortunately we did. And so the members of our community have never seen us actually present them with that option, that idea that we understand it's been tough times. And I think that is an important thing for us to remember. I think if we passed a motion to increase it by 1%, that could almost be seen as, why would you increase it at all? I wonder, councillors, whether there might be an option for us to first of all consider the £3,000 that In Bloom has asked about, because if we did consider that, that would maybe cause an increase anyway in what we wanted to achieve. Of course, we could always, if we really wanted to bite the bullet, take that out of our reserves and reduce them to £116,501, and that way we wouldn't put the burden of increasing the In Bloom cost onto the taxpayer immediately. And we might be mindful then of Councillor Tucker's point that we have actually, perhaps more than I can ever remember on this council, when we have been going through precept, been through this one with quite a fine-tooth comb, trying to make sure that we were covering ourselves without placing too much of a burden upon the residents. Councillor Barney.
Thank you. Thank you for what you said, Councillor Tucker. And I just was doing very quick bit of arithmetic, and if we're talking about potentially 3% of the figures that are presented here, that's about 13,250. And you mentioned that there was leeway because of how the accounts are being set out. If we went to do the 3%, would that potentially 3% be covered, the 13,000 plus, by the monies that you were talking about? Sorry, was that clear? I don't know if I was very clear.
Well, what you're saying is, in our prudence in setting the precept, have we already taken into account enough the potential for an increase through inflation? That's the question, and you've given us a figure of what the increase through inflation would be.
Well, that's just a very quick
Ballpark, of course.
Yeah, ballpark.
Which is how much?
13,250.
So, £13,000. Have we given ourselves, in our entire budget, enough leeway that if we have we given ourselves £13,000 grace, is what you're asking? Well, councillors ponder that. Does anyone else wish to speak to this? So, Councillor Henderson, you were saying that you, as seconder, would like to change what, in light of what you've heard. Is that correct?
Well, if we raise the precept or raise the figure by 1%, which isn't very much, that's £4,000, which would cover your in bloom costs and maybe help towards inflation. But I'm also very mindful of the fact that there are vagaries in the figures that won't last forever, that are built into the accounts, which will benefit us in the following year. So even if we do take a small hit this year, we'll benefit from next year. So to be perfectly honest, I mean, I'm quite happy, if Nick's happy to sort of withdraw, to keep it the same. I mean, obviously, you know.
I'll come up on this one. I will withdraw, but I will warn the council. I see issues ahead if we don't raise by inflation. And also, we also have to bear in mind that you've got a unitary council coming up, where more expenses, more staff, etc. will be required by this council within the next year or so. And I think you've got to bear all this in mind, and I don't think that's been adequately taken on board somehow. And I think you need to be really wary that we're going to have to put it up, or the new council will have to put it up quite substantially to next year to cover all the expenses that will be coming down the line. Because believe you me, you're not going to get money for it.
Thank you. Sorry, Councillor Much, then Councillor Tucker, then Councillor Keary.
Yeah, the point's been made that there's been a couple of very tough years, for certain true, but it doesn't follow that it's going to get less tough. And what I read in the heavyweight newspapers is that inflation is going upwards, with various fallouts and political decisions. It's going to be difficult to stop it going higher. So, you know, Councillor Tucker's point about you don't make an increase and then it works a year or so on, I think it's maybe more moot than we might have imagined.
Thank you. Councillor Tucker?
Can I just remind councillors that we have taken this into account when we actually did the budget. If I take you to the town hall budget page, just as an instance, so you could give some examples. I mean, the probable gas bill this year was £3,000. We budgeted for 3,900 in the next year. So we put 30% in there. In the electric, the probable bill for the electric was 3,500. We put a budget of 4,550. So we put over a third on there. So within what I'm saying to you is that we've already taken this into account when we did all the budgeting. That's the point of sitting down and doing your budget. And if you now want to add a bit more on top, I'm not trying to, but I'm just trying to point out to you that if you are now trying to add another piece on top of top, the whole point of doing a proper budget is to have taken those things into account when you do the budgeting, not just to sort of say, well, let's just pluck a figure and stick it on. And that was why we went through this so carefully to try and budget what we realistically think is going to cost the ratepayers of the town to run it. If you've got a scheme that you think is going to happen in the future that you want to put some money in the budget for, that's a different matter. But what I suggest to you is that maybe is an issue for when unitary comes, that is an issue for a new council to decide what things they might want to take on behalf of the town and negotiate with the successor council as to how that will be paid for, whether it's going to be paid for by the ratepayers of Glastonbury or whether it's paid by the unitary. But that's a different debate. Tonight we're talking about the budget that we've very carefully gone through to prove that we could produce a balanced budget. But as I say, it'll be for the council to decide on.
Councillors, I would also ask you to draw your attention to the salaries figure on page 1 of the administration budget. We have increased that substantially without causing a cost to the ratepayer. And as I can't remember which councillor pointed it out, but within that, of course, is the capacity that Gerard, as we know, has decided that he will be sadly leaving us in a year or so's time, and we've already catered for that. And once Gerard goes, that will be another amount of money that will potentially could be assigned elsewhere within the budget, and that's not an insubstantial increase there. That's a £20,000 increase. So it strikes me that we have future-proofed this budget quite well, considering the future council's issues next year.
Yeah, okay.
So, Councillor Henderson, I saw you raise your hand.
No, I was just going to comment about the fact that this is a balanced budget, but we didn't know about 3,000 for the bloom. That's all I was going to say. But I can see that there's provision in there for that anyway.
I'd like to come back to the bloom.
Yeah. So, Councillor Cotter, you've withdrawn your proposal.
Yeah, I will withdraw it because not because I think it's wrong, but because I'm being cooperative with other members of the council.
Very noble.
And a true testament to your years and experience of being an excellent councillor. Thank you very much. Councillors, we still have
Your Worship, can I just say, I raised the issue to promote the debate.
Yeah.
Councillor Tucker and I had long discussions about the amounts that we have written into the budget at the meeting. But I thought that the issue of inflation was only raised late in the day and we didn't even discuss it. And we know inflation is going to be going at a fairly high rate. So I thought it was worth having the discussion amongst councillors, not necessarily to raise the precept. And we can probably absorb the 3,000 in reserves there. But I think that the fact that we've had the debate, hopefully, if we get control of the car park, which we're working on, and if we put in proper car parking arrangements, we're going to get a bigger income from car park as well. So within the plans that we have to proceed, I think there is money. But I thought it was worth raising the debate because some of our residents may say, well, why have they held it when they know inflation's going on? And the other side of the coin is we need to be looking after residents when they're already going to have hardship because of the inflation in many ways anyhow. And the fact that we can hold it and have a balanced budget at this point probably is the right thing to do. And we hopefully will see the benefits of it in the future because of all the things that we've discussed. And I think I'll just leave it.
We'll just have to see, won't we?
Yeah.
So councillors, do I have a proposer to, oh, sorry, councillor Bishop.
Just want to make a comment. There's a great debate on this inflation, but basically we're in a situation where you're damned if you do and damned if you don't, basically. So we either got to bite the bullet and go with one or the other. As fuel costs, I know we pushed in 30%. We do know that's going to be 50 to 80% by next April. Some of the fuel costs going up. So maybe next April, you can have to look at it again. But whatever decision we make, and that's what we're here for, the decision we stand by.
Thank you very much, councillor. Do I have a proposer that we accept the summary budget for the precept as detailed here, with the £3,000 for In Bloom absorbed into the reserve? So that would reduce the reserve by £3,000 to £116,501. Do I have a proposal? Thank you, Councillor Kay. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Smythe? Thank you. Anybody wish to speak against that motion? Can I have a show of hands of all those in favour? Thank you. Thank you. That was a very good debate, councillors. Thank you very much. We now move on to reports from... Oh, we have set the precept, I guess, in doing so. Is that correct?
Yes, Your Worship.
Yeah, so we've neatly covered off 2 items in one go. We now move to reports from outside bodies, Towns Fund. Councillor Tucker.
Thank you, Your Worship. It's good to be able to speak in this meeting of mask off.
Broke the string on more.
The first cohorts, the big projects that are moving forward first, have got now to the point of the commercial case, and we've now been sort of talked to about procurement, which is a really complicated issue in terms of how the projects are going to move forward. And therefore, there is consultants and project managers now being appointed for those projects, which we've actually met one online today. As Liz already said, there's meetings going on with the land usage. I mean, there isn't the constraints. I think the consultants were quite surprised at where the blue line is. So we can't spend money outside of the blue line. That this is what's been designated. And Brian raised earlier about the fact that, you know, we didn't pick up on housing under the town deal, but it was particularly excluded by the government under the town deal, so it wasn't anything we could include. So that's why that was excluded. But what I'm really keen we're trying to do is make sure that this is all joined up. I keep talking now about the Moorlands lights, because the issue of the Moorlands lights, the traffic lights along Street Road, really frustrates me every time I park there. And we as a council, the RDA came up with this idea that they were going to have an access to the site. They said that there was going to be a blue light unit there for the police, the fire brigade and the ambulance. Well, I knew jolly well that the fire brigade weren't ever going to move there, because there's no firemen live there. They all live in the towns, and it was never going to work. But the officers and the planners got their heads together and had this concept in their mind. So they then said they had to have controlled lights on this junction. We said, let's put a roundabout. And we went through this full town council, we went to Mendip and argued it, but because the developer had put forward a proposal which the county council couldn't other than approve because it complied with all the statutory requirements, Mendip said they couldn't turn it down on planning, and every time I drive the street, I have to wait while nothing comes out and think of all these cars and then see all these vehicles converging from a double road into... I just think, how ridiculous. So what I'm trying to avoid is another Moorlands traffic light with this issue, that we want to try and get as many people working together and as many of the projects meshed together, because that's where we're going to get the maximum benefit. So I can tell you on Thursday, I think and I'm sure Liz is doing it, I mean, 27 hours is nothing when you start getting involved with the town deal. I can tell you, I think I start at 10 o'clock with Zoom meetings, and I think apart from I got an hour off to be able to TV test and cattle, in the middle of the day, the last one is at 7 o'clock, the starts at 7 o'clock at night on Thursday. I mean, it is just full on with consultants and Zoom meetings all over with lots of stuff. But there is loads going on. There are lots of officers working in the background trying to bring all these things together. I think our roles as local, Liz and I, other councillors who get involved, our role is to try and bring these officers who are all remote. This is the problem, you know, they're all finding solutions from, they're all on Zooming, God knows where. I mean, one lot who were doing some sort of consultancy for us was in Canada. I mean, it's fine that we've got high-ranking people, but we need to make sure they understand the local issues. So that's what I think we're working on. So there's a lot of work going on this. There's plenty more to do, but it's still exciting, and hopefully we're going to get a really good project at the end of it.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Councillor Tucker? It does feel good that we're moving still forward with this, and I think that the joined up approach is exactly what's required. So let's continue with that. Mayor's announcements. Jared, could you pass me one of those posters? Breaking with mayoral tradition in this town, I've gone hip with the young folk, and we are having a mashup to raise money for the Mayor's charity. Thank you, Boris, if you're still watching, for not putting us into lockdown and making it impossible for me to raise any money at all for the Mayor's charity, which of course is the Glastonbury People's Trust. So if you're free on Friday the 21st, after you might have been to the climate emergency meeting and wish to get down with the kids and have some drum and bass or some other form of modern music, I'm sure there are many involved, including jungle. Tonight is the night, so it's rather cheap. It's £5 on the door. There's a bar being provided by the Wick Carnival Club, and it's going to be one fantastic multi-genre mashup, ladies and gentlemen. Do come along on the 21st, Friday 21st of January. That ends Mayor's announcements. So we now move to communications and announcements. Gerald, do we have any?
Yep, numerous, I'm afraid, Your Worship. So I've taken my mask off to help you through these. With your, prior to the agenda, but I sent it out with the agenda, but prior to this, I sent out by email, so you've had it twice, is the proposal to introduce the Public Space Protection Order. And that information was, sent twice. The purpose of this is to consult on some changes which are quite radical in their thinking, but we are identified as being part of the partnership on the opening page, and I would encourage you to, because we are identified as being part of that partnership, I'd encourage us to think, are we actively getting what we want from the Public Space Protection Order? So if you have the order in front of you, and I'm hoping you do, I'm now looking at, well, this is not numbered, but page 3, at the top paragraph there, where it speaks about the barrister's expertise on tackling public nuisance, is that a public space protection order would be considered the best option to tackle the above issues. And that it goes on to say that this is an easy touch to settle the temporary in that time period. And it makes reference to the other partners, being the county, district, town councils, and together with the police. So what I was particularly keen that we didn't do was just take it as one more report and move on, without having the opportunity to discuss, if that's what you choose to do this evening, or respond individually to the Public Space Protection Order, should you wish to do so. I'll draw your attention, if I may, to the page that, if you look at the very bottom, it says, how would the PSPO be likely to affect the GRT community. In the paragraph above that, I'm going to read the part there, that how would the public space protection order help reduce the dispersion to other locations within Glastonbury or to neighbouring parishes? And the beginning of that response, I think, is worthy of note. We are considering whether any adopted public space protection order regarding unauthorised encampments should be restricted to the town of Glastonbury, the parish of Glastonbury, or whether it may have an effect over a wider geographical area. Now that makes reference, of course, to what was mentioned earlier by Councillor Lation on once unitary is in, about the changes that affect the responses that have to be made towards the provision for various sites for travellers and gypsies, showmen, etc. So I didn't intend to go through the whole thing, Your Worship, because you have had it twice. But I wanted to draw your attention to the importance of this document and basically ask, do you wish to have a collaborative response from the Council, or are you wishing to respond individually to it? I'll stop there.
Thank you. I think it is pertinent what Councillor Lindsay McDougall was saying earlier on about the lack of affordable housing, the lack of housing in general, and the lack of dwellings being provided for by this government and its policies. Without being too overtly political about it, hoping that Boris might still be watching us, I would say that to issue criminal proceedings, public space protection orders against people who are victims of a crime is a very interesting thing to do, to resolve a situation where the real crime is the lack of affordable housing and the lack of dwellings for everyday folk to live in. Many of the people who are living in the vans are everyday people who just can't afford to rent somewhere. And we have to be very careful about this classic thing that seems to be quite prevalent within British society of othering people without really knowing who they are and putting everybody into the same boat. And I know from being on this council for many years, not as many as some of my esteemed colleagues, but for many years, that some of the worst antisocial behaviour is actually done by families who've lived here a very long time in houses. We can probably all instantly think of one family. So, please, when we are thinking about and considering this, please let's not fall into that mindset of taking back control, because that is extremely dangerous thinking, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Councillor McDougall.
I understood all the time that I've been on this council that we haven't considered public space protection orders because it's not possible to enforce. In particular with the van dwelling community, if you find them, they'll move on. They don't have a fixed address. So enforcement is always a big issue when you're laying down the law as to whether it's a reasonable law. I've learnt that in all sorts of areas, whether it's from speeding, whether it's from PSPOs, and many other things. If it's not considered a reasonable law that you can enforce, you're going to have trouble with it.
Thank you. Any other comments? Councillor Ronnie Dougal.
Yes, I have to say that this proposal fills me with horror. First they came for the gypsies, then they came for the Jews. It's that. It's that level as far as I'm concerned. I don't see the problem actually is the fact that we are building houses. We've been building houses for the last 80 years or more. I see the problem is we aren't providing traveller sites. These people are managing not to sleep in the doorways on the high streets. These people have managed to get themselves a van or caravan. They've managed to do that, coming from very, very difficult circumstances, a lot of them. And I think that we need to support them to be able to live in a very low-tech style by giving them a site where they can park up without being moved on being evicted. I've just been helping to clean up Hyde's Mound. I was grief-struck on Sunday because somebody had their whole wardrobe was just in the mud. There was their son's school tie with the little name tag label that sewed on, the son's school cap. They'd obviously been out of work when the eviction happened. Their kid had obviously been in school when the eviction happened. And nice clothes. I mean, these weren't ragged things. These were really good quality clothes, all in the mud. And it was, I tell you, it was heartbreaking because it was somebody's life, it was somebody's home that had been completely devastated. They had not been given, in the year, 18 months, 2 years that they were down on Hyde's Mound, we had not found an alternative for them to be moved to. We had not found an alternative site for them to be moved to. Shame on us. Some of them are junkies, some of them cause trouble, some of them are a pain in the neck, but some of them are really good people, they're families who have not got a place to live and need a place to live, and they've managed to get the van and they haven't been given a place to put that caravan. And I see our priority is not to build more houses, not to have this sort of thing, but to find a place where they can have a site that they can park up. And that I see as our moral, ethical duty, looking after and caring for those who are on the fringes of our society, the people who are more impoverished than we are. Let us look after everybody. We're all people, we're all people. And some people have had a really tough time in life and they need a helping hand. And the way we can help them is to find a site for them.
Thank you. It is a great shame, isn't it, that being human isn't a protected characteristic. Councillor Smythe.
Thank you, Worship. I'd just like to thank Serena for that question response, which I wholeheartedly agree with. And just refer councillors to the fact that there's a reference to this area being an attractive, easy-touch place to settle. Well, in fact, that is an incorrect description, because this place is a sanctuary and has been for centuries, for hundreds of years. It's a sanctuary to those people who need to find some resolve, some peace. And these refugees, they come from all over the country, particularly from all over the southwest. But there's nowhere else to go, a lot of them. And as Serena says, some of them are bad apples, but most of them aren't. Most of them are just trying their best to live a life and being gentle on the earth and haven't the money to live in house and stuff. I'd just like to draw council's attention to item 23 on the agenda. I don't have to say any more, but this council does have a general duty to consider these following matters, recognising all of its functions.
Well, he's talking about our policy statement around protected characteristics.
That's correct. Health and safety and human rights.
Councillor McDougall.
Just come back on the building of houses. I'm not advocating building houses. I'm advocating looking at the whole policy area of how we handle land use, including how we legislate and regulate housing. There are all sorts of things we can do, like look at Airbnb. I know of, for instance, it isn't uncommon practice for people who live in houses to go and live in a van and rent out the house. I mean, there's got to be something a little bit wrong with that it's worthwhile doing that.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Munch.
If I can throw in a slightly wild card idea here, I think given the limitations of building because of the topography around here and the flooding issue, we should start thinking about water dwelling, either houses on stilts or boats, and even expanding the irrigation ditches, which the whole area is honeycombed with. I'm talking about major, canal building, really. I've seen the numbers of people in London now living in boats. Great communities. And it doesn't then have quite the same visual impact on the land, because if the problem were to get resolved by some other means, the posts could simply be moved. There's a flexibility and attractiveness to it, which I think is something we ought to think about.
Thank you. So, councillors, we're being asked to consider this document, this pre-consultation document. Any other comments? Councillor Bishop?
Yes. For far too long, and I'll say this now, the can has been kicked down the road in Glastonbury the last 4, 6, 10, 15 years with van dwellers or caravan dwellers. If we speak to the residents at Redlands, in and around the Tor, in and around the Beckery, that have to suffer this, okay, then they want answers and they want results. Now, I agree there should be some sort of site for people to pay a low-income rent to dwell for a certain length of time. This is not covered GTR at all. That is a recognised ethnic group of individuals that have rights. Van dwellers and caravan dwellers currently do not have ethnic rights. Okay, some is a chosen way of life, some is a life forced upon them. And I've heard a lot of people debate this. I don't think this town council has been listening to the residents of Glastonbury because they're sick and fed up with them. Okay, and they want answers. Now, we've had evictions from Bride's Mound, and they go to Bretton Road. They then go to Kenmore Grove. I think there's up to 50 vehicles at Kenmore Grove at the moment. I've had several phone calls from residents in Cinnamon Lane Way complaining yet again of behaviour. I've not witnessed it, I don't see, so, but it was mentioned earlier by the councillor. Some of the van dwellers, reported to me by 2 residents to Redlands, have been going into the orchard down by the Cinnamon Park there and cutting off the branches off the trees to burn in their fires. So really, mend it. Somerset County Council, not so much Glastonbury Town Council at the moment, have all blamed everybody else. And they've done nothing to alleviate the problems that have been put upon this town. Okay? Here is an opportunity to try and tackle something and try something new. Lawfully, it will be challenged. We will have to have some work done on it as well. Okay? And I've already given my response to the officer at Mendit, okay, as was asked and requested in the email that went out, okay, and I think we need to be mindful and start listening to people of Glastonbury of what they think.
Thank you, Councillor Bishop. Believe you me, this council listens to the residents of Glastonbury. It's not correct to say that we have to start listening to them, because we do listen to them. We have been listening to them all the time. So please don't think and please don't tell people that we're not listening, because we are. We've been involved.
Can I respond?
We've been involved in this process all the way through. You've been here while we've been discussing.
Can I respond?
Yes, of course.
Okay. If it come across that way, I did not mean that way. You've not responded or done anything. What I'm saying is, everybody blames everybody else and no one wants to bite the bullet. That's what I was trying to allude to. It's not apportioning blame to any individual or any individual councillor at all whatsoever, but something has to be done to resolve this problem.
We're all in agreement with that.
And nobody has an entitlement to decide, oh, that's a nice place, I think I'll move there, put a caravan on the side of the road, I'll live there. Okay, and I know it's a place of sanctuary and a pilgrimage, but you cannot keep on. We all say about tonight, we have not enough houses for people, and yet we have more and more people coming in. More and more people come in. A drain on the resources. You know, something has to be done, and sometimes, you know, hard decisions have to be made. And
thank you very much, Councillor Barnett, Councillor Cottle, Councillor Tucker.
Along with everybody else around this table. During the lockdown, I've had 2 neighbours with very heavy domestic violence issues, a child on the run, people breaking into people's outbuildings to steal, not travellers, locals. And I think that what happens, and I was very pleased to hear Trina's passionate thing, is that when we live in houses, which I'm fortunate to do now, but I have lived in a caravan, I do know what that's like. People can't always hear what's going on unless our windows are open or we open our doors and we shout at the top of our voices. But when people are outside, they're more vulnerable and they can be heard more. And I don't feel that what's in this document is, besides the language that's always been mentioned by other councillors, which I find incredibly inappropriate, it's not actually dealing with the situation. Glastonbury is not on its own in dealing with this situation. We know that part of our influx was from Bristol. Bristol got fed up with the number of people they were doing and they shoved a load out and a load of them came here. So that's just one example. But I have real reservations about this proposal in the way it's worded at the moment. I have reservations about what it's actually dealing with. It's making the victims of how sick our society is, because it really is, because all these things are going on. It makes them doubly victims and scapegoated. And so I actually, and hearing the conversations, I'm really feeling really uncomfortable about it. I haven't made my personal comments to it. I was interested, Your Worship, that you were asking whether we should do a council response as well as individual responses, and I wondered whether that was actually something that we wanted to do. I think we would be seen in a bad position if we didn't make some kind of formal response.
Thank you. Councillor Cottle.
Thank you, Your Worship. I wish to take issue with Clive. I find it very disheartening, your attitude towards Mendip District Council, your attitude towards Somerset County Council, who you belong to that party, and you're saying this, that and the other, and you're claiming to stand for lots of Glastonbury people. I wish I knew who they all were, because have been so adamant on solving this issue for a long time before you were a councillor, and so is Councillor Lyshin over here. They've worked their socks off to do this, to try and get this solved, and for you to stand up there and say that we do nothing, and all we do is blame everybody else, is absolute rubbish, and I'm not prepared to listen to it. It's crap.
Respond.
So just get in the real world.
Calm down, please. Thank you. A very aggressive tone.
It's going to get more aggressive.
What's yours? Aggressive?
Oh.
Councillors, right to reply, Councillor Bishop.
Yes, I did. If you actually listen to what I said that you've been kicking the can down the road. County blames Mendip, Mendip blames County. It goes backwards and forwards. Police don't do anything, they get blamed. So that's what I said, it's kicking the can down the road. Now Mendip, we're trying to put a proposal forward or a consultation to address the issues, and that's what we're here to talk about now, okay? So I'm not blaming any individual.
Didn't sound like it to me.
I'm a town councillor, and I apologise if it's come across in that way. It's not blaming any individual. I'm saying, what I hear people say, people blame county, they blame Mendip, Mendip blame county, county blame Mendip. We've got MAG for what's that been running out for a year and a half, 2 years, okay? But still the residents have the problem. That's what I'm trying to address. They still have that problem. And when you say about who do I talk to, I would say to you, look at the election in May 2020. Thank you very much when I got elected. That's the people that listen to me.
Well, I'm not going to go into where you actually got elected to.
Councillor Cottle?
I just really don't like your attitude towards other councils and councillors.
So, councillors, we'll just calm the proceeding down a moment. I've just asked Gerard what's expected of us. We have been asked if we've got any comments on this document. We have to provide them by the 31st of January. So we need to bear that in mind. We might want to suggest changes or amendments to the documentation, and we might want to provide some comment back to mend it on issues such as language, etc., etc. And I know that Councillor Lyson's already raised that issue. So we obviously feel strongly about this, and it is a subject that is emotive because it's people's lives and people's livelihoods. And you know, I've been witness to some of the people who've had to move places who have been extremely upset about being evicted. It's the same as you being evicted out of your house. You know, you've got nowhere else to go, and it's like everybody's against you, and it's the middle of winter. Good grief. Councillor Tucker.
I think councillors need to understand where this has come from and why it's in front of you. And also to take you back to the beginning of when the money came through for the Town Deal Fund, and the members of the Town Deal Fund from Glastonbury, who were the people, when we sat around this table, were adamant that if we were going to get a real good result from the Town Deal Fund, part of it had to be what has now been called the Enabling Fund, but part of it had to resolve the issue of the travellers' sites. And we made that a play for that, which wasn't particularly popular with the powers that be. In fact, some people said that it wouldn't be part of, they didn't think it would fit in with the ethos of it, but we put it as a centre of the problem. There was no good doing all the other things if we didn't solve that problem as well. And that's what we've been working on, to try and resolve some sites for traveller sites. But as we've already said, we can't solve the world's problem in Glastonbury. We can only do something that is proportionate to Glastonbury. But on the other hand, if you're going to provide all these sites and things, you've then got to have a means of policing it to make sure that that works. This document is what they've come back to with that part. So what I encourage people to do is look at it with a cool head. This is part of solving the problem. It's been acknowledged that we're going to try and find some sites, and we're looking hard into that at the moment, and it is part of the town deal to do that. But it's also necessary to be able to police the rest of the town so that it all works. Otherwise, the community in a general won't accept it. It has to be seen to be fair from every aspect of the town. And that's what this is for. So I think 10 o'clock at night is not the time we should start sitting through a long document, wading through it word by word. I agree with this. I think there's a few things in here that probably want tweaking. But look at it in the balance of the two parts, and that's what this is for. So that was all I would say in future. So if you felt that you needed to have a separate meeting, Your Worship, or people that did it individually, but I suggest that 10 o'clock at night is not the time to be starting to wade through this, go through it word by word to discuss it.
Thank you. Councillors, do you want to... my feeling is, as it's quite a tight deadline, it may be appropriate for us to schedule a Zoom meeting where we just discuss this item. Gerald, is that possible to try and arrange?
By all means, Your Worship.
Councillors, also, if you have any points that you'd like to write to Gerard with around the wording or your thoughts, perhaps you could do that as well as having that at the meeting. I'll take one more on this, and that's Councillor McDougall.
In the heated argument about what Somerset County Council has done, Tory-led Somerset County Council, I do wonder if they've done anything at all. That's the question I would ask Clive Bishop, apart from make unhelpful moves like removing sensibly located sites from the markets that they're actually not available. What has Somerset County Council actually done apart from shove the can around the place?
Well, thank you for that reflection. I am not expecting anyone to reply to that. It's a question that we can all ponder at our leisure after the meeting. Is there anything else on this item, Gerard? You said there were a few.
Sorry, Your Worship, yes, sorry, on that PSPO, I've dealt with it. I'll take my mask off if you don't mind. There's a number of items, further items of announcements and correspondence, if I may. I'll fly through these, you'll be pleased to know. I've had correspondence from the county highways who are following up a request from residents on Chilkwell Street to provide an additional 6 car parking spaces between the bottom of Dodd Lane going towards the Tor, towards Chapter Mallet. And I'm just sharing with you that there is some consultation that's about to start to provide 6 more spaces through there. No action required, just keeping you informed. In response to the road gullies question that was raised about Basketfield and Eggerley, that came up earlier this evening as well, but I've had a response from County Highways. I'll read it you. Thank you for your email. An inspection of the road gullies in question has been arranged, and any safety defects identified will be actioned as necessary. Then it's a reference for block drains on Manor House Road, and a separate reference for Basketfield Lane to Eggerley. The matter of Eggerley is currently under investigation, and any works identified will be actioned as soon as possible. So that was very much a holding email. It was a non-actionable holding email. Keeping going, Your Worship, if I may, in response to the concerns raised on 2 separate town council meetings about the Old Wells Road traffic speed. This one, I'm afraid, also needs reading, so just bear with me, please, if I may. This is from Traffic Management at Somerset County Highways. The Department of Transport guidance for setting local speed limits is clear criteria where local authorities should install speed limits to ensure consistency throughout the county. The guidance is also clear that speed limits should be evidence-led, self-explaining, and seek to reinforce people's assessment of what is a safe speed to travel. That's the overarching one. Get down to specifics. My investigations reveal that fortunately there's only been 1 collision as a rear-end shunt over the last 5-year period, which does mean this area is not a priority for us in terms of further investigation or indeed funding for improvement works at this time. I think that pretty well clearly shares where the highways are on that particular item. We will not be getting a site visit with them, Your Worship.
I will admit, Gerard, I have shared this information with certain members of Watts Corner who didn't take it too happily, shall we say, but we'll have to wait and see and try again when we've got a new council with a bit of sense onto it, and because it's going to get dangerous down there with this new estate.
Thank you. Gerard, is there anything else that you need to
Sorry, Your Worship, there is, because you've been active in the last few months. You recall at the November Town Council meeting, you asked me to write to the, and I forgot the guy's name, and I beg your pardon, Boris, if you're watching, about the tackling the climate change was on the back of COP26, if you recall. So in response to my email endorsing COP26, but asking for some more haste in working to mitigate the problems more locally, I've had an email back today from the correspondence officer at the Cabinet Office, and it's again a holding email. I'll read just one statement to you here. It says, as you rightly say, that's as I rightly say, local governments and leaders have a key role in meeting net zero targets. We want to mobilise cities, regions, businesses and investors in the UK and around the world to continue to raise their ambition by signing up to the Race to Zero initiative, of which there's a link. So again, it was an acknowledgement of receipt, but a holding email, Your Worship. I'm going to keep going. Yes. I think we're nearly done. You'll be pleased to know. I have had correspondence with Street Parish Council from Linda Ruff, sorry, beg your pardon, Laura Wolfers, the chair, wishing us all a healthy and prosperous 2022, but basically asking when can we get together again? There's a will on their part for the two councils to continue discussion. And I think the driver there, Your Worship, is the opportunity to work with perhaps thinking about local community networks and perhaps thinking about how we may do things together in the future in some areas.
Here.
And that, Your Worship, is it. Thank you.
So, Gerard, would you be happy to arrange with Street Council a meeting of both councils in this chamber or on Zoom, whichever is most appropriate, so that we can discuss the issues of how we can work together as we're moving into the new unitary authority, the impact of that, and of course not just the local clusters that we may be involved in, but also, which came out of the last meeting, the way that we might both work together to address supporting the mental ill health and the other health issues that have come out, not COVID health issues, but have come out of the COVID scare and the lockdown, that have a very, very profound impact upon lots of members of our community. That would be very useful. And within that as well, of course, we have the desire with St Dunstan's House and with our town deal aspect there to be setting up some sort of hub around health and well-being, which we may be able to work together with Street to promote.
I will happily do that, Your Worship.
Correspondence?
I've covered all the items under correspondence there, Your Worship.
News release. Council has less than boring meeting.
Oh, look at that. We've got a story. How did Nick know what he was trying?
Neutral budget. That's a very good. Council decides to not increase precept to show solidarity with community during difficult times.
Yeah.
Something along those lines. Could we also perhaps take advantage of the wonderful photographs we have of not only the Lord Lieutenant and not only the High Sheriff and not only Deputy Lieutenants, but also a Mayor too, all helping to plant the new pencil oak that is in the car park as our first action in celebrating the glorious 70 years of the monarch. New pencil oak is in place. All these wonderful dignitaries help plant it. We have some photographs. Maybe we should do a press release on that. Yeah.
Can I ask Joe, have we received the holy thorn from Kew to go in their back garden, Joe?
No.
So that's something for us to pursue. So actions rising from the meeting.
The last one, Your Worship, is for me to contact Street Parish Council and arrange a date, and I'll liaise with you. Bear with me. Your finger where you've got mashed off, anyway. And for me to follow up again for the second time, and I did do this, Councillor Ronnie Dougal, with the allotments on Windmill Hill, and I put Timbridge on my notes down at St Dunstan's Park. But I will follow both those up again. But those are the only two actions I have, Your Worship.
Thank you very much. So now we need to exclude the press and public, enter into confidential session.
Before we do that, Your Worship, have we got a proposed date for a meeting of the council to discuss the public space protection order?
Yes, we might as well try and sort that out now. Good point, Councillor Keary. It has to be between now and, I would suggest, the 30th.
Your Worship, can I ask, are we thinking of a Zoom discussion?
I think that might be the easiest way to get us all together.
The earliest I could do would be next Monday evening, the 17th of January.
My birthday.
Oh. Is it really, John?
My birthday party, like Boris.
Is it your birthday on the 17th of January?
It is.
Oh, shit. How wonderful.
I'm a war baby.
Unacceptable. John, here.
Unacceptable, Your Worship.
Bring your own drinks.
Well, it also happens to be my birthday as well.
What, 17?
Yeah, we're twins.
Oh. I was born during an air raid.
Me too. So, Is it okay to have a meeting on your birthday, John? That's the thing.
If my wife is not taking me out anywhere, yeah, of course it is.
A Zoom meeting, Your Worship, should we say 7 o'clock start?
7 o'clock starts.
Okay, I'll circulate the information for that as normal.
Thank you. Now we move to exclude the press and the public, so we enter into confidential session to co-op. Sorry, Marsh.
Presumably we can respond to this individually.
Yes, of course.
Thank you. Beg your pardon.
So we now move into, eventually, we need to make sure that the recording of the meeting is finished. And we exclude the press and the public into confidential session as per standing orders to co-opt and fill the current vacancy of St Mary's Ward.
Your Worship, can I inquire, are we now to fill 2 vacancies as there was a resignation?
No, because we have to let due course happen. We need, Brian's resignation needs to be registered with the with Mendip District Council's monitoring officer and with the elections officer, and they need to follow due process because although I don't think that they will push for an election now, but they may then let them come back, I'm afraid. Yeah.
Any big financial decisions, yes.